Ding dong,
So
the Wicked Witch is dead, and welcome to a brand new episode of Jen and Jake's Bizarre Adventure, where we get
Affray,
together and fuck, I
we
fucked
need.
it up. God damn it, son
Great
of a
now.
bitch! I
Yeah.
will find a way. Jurassic Park taught me life finds a way.
And so does the edit. Welcome back to Jen and Jake's Bizarre Affray, where Jake and I competitively recommend each other new things in order to share a great adventure of discovery, rivalry, and ultimately friendship. And I need Jake to remember that I am their friend because I think the last segment of this episode might test that friendship. But before we get to that, we have two albums to talk about this week. The first of which from one of Jake's favorite bands. Yes, is that correct to say?
Oh, 1000%. And the trouble is, too, we have had such an onslaught of musical releases, is that you could actually be talking about multiple albums and multiple bands because, I mean, I guess September just decided to be that bitch.
I made a
But,
short list actually of some new releases that I just want to highlight that we did not have
same,
time to cover. So let me just do that now. Sabrina Carpenter, Man's Best Friend. Really, really good. I've been listening to this a lot and I like it a lot. It's not as tight. It's definitely not as, instantly iconic as Short and Sweet, but Man's Best Friend is way more interesting as an album that explores the kind of post-breakup cycle for her. And that's where I've been
agreed.
getting a lot of my enjoyment out of it. West Side Gun, Heels Have Eyes 2. Very good, very jazz rappy, very similar in its sonic scape, honestly, to the Earl Sweatshirt album, which we're going to talk about in full this episode.
Mhm.
Very jazzy, very drumless adjacent stuff going on there. Very, very good. Uh, Dijon, Baby. I had never heard this guy before,
Me
but
either.
I just put this on out of curiosity because it was doing really well on Rate Your Music.
Yep.
Imagine if Veteran was made by a guy who really likes Frank Ocean and D'Angelo, and that's kind of
Yes!
what you're getting with this Dijon album.
Yes! Completely agree.
Very, very glitchy R&B with very straightforward vocals and very unkempt abstract production, which is where I'm getting my JPEG Mafia comp here. Nina Geraci, which I know we both listened to. I Love My Computer. This is like up there with the Jane Mover for me in terms of just absolute, you want to get me moving fast, put this on.
One of the best
Great
dance
stuff.
albums of the last few years. Great shit. Great shit. Cosign.
Last one I need to shout, and I know you listened to this as well. Haley Williams, Ego Death at a Bachelorette Party. I listened to this when it was just all separate singles. I'd made
Mhm.
a little playlist and just kind of threw them together and listened to it through. But I listened to it again with the track list that is on the album. Really good stuff, like
Yeah.
peak singer songwriter. If there was ever, I feel like this isn't a term that we've used since the first Hosier album, but if there was ever a need for adult contemporary to come back into music discussion lexicon, it might be for something like this. Um,
Completely agree. She's in her like Paul McCartney doing Ram bag on this fucking album. It's legitimately like we actually covered her first two solo outings on our previous show, and I lamented frequently that I couldn't get more into this because I am a big fan of a lot of Paramore stuff. And to me, this album stands like with some of the best Paramore stuff that has come out. And frankly, I think I that Ego Death is even better than the last Paramore album we got, which I already thought was really, really solid. So like this is a really interesting, really vibrant, really well written and dense piece of work that I just think is like I'm really glad that this got thrust into the critical spotlight and was released in the way that it was. It's really, really something else.
no surprise talking about a Haley Williams album, but I just feel like I need to belabor the point. Best vocals of the year all
Oh,
over this record.
god damn, yeah. God damn. Whew. And to throw in some of my own additions
Please.
to this, first and foremost, we have Deftones coming out with their most recent album, which, big band. This channel, we are huge fans. We covered their discography in its entirety, and we built up to the release of 2020's Ohms, which was collectively one of our favorite, in fact, really our second favorite album collectively of the year in 2020. And so I had decently high expectations for this, seeing as Ohms is not only one of my favorite albums of that year, but my favorite Deftones album. So I was like, I was ready. And Private Music, this we're continuing the fucking streak. This shit is Deftones as good as you've ever heard them, doing everything you would want and a little bit more. This is the most like post-metally kind of hum adjacent album they've ever come out with. And nobody's age is showing on this fucking record. That I mean, like they've been making music for more than 30 years now, and these guys haven't lost a fucking step. This has many songs that I would put among their best shit, like Mind is a Mountain, Locked Club, I Think About You All the Time, and Milk of the Madonna are absolute highlights. And I think that everybody, like, Ohms was a little bit more of a contentious release that was a kind of gnarled and ugly album that not everybody got behind, but this kind of seems to have collectively gotten everybody as being like, yeah, this is another great entry, and I really couldn't agree more. And additionally, there is a release that is a little bit older, but that I didn't get to until now, which is by the musician who goes by the name Giant Claw, who is a part of the collective called Death's Dynamic Shroud, who I've shouted out a lot of reviews in
Mm.
the past. The most recent Giant Claw project come out, Decadent Stress Chamber, is maybe the best pop album I've heard all year. Probably the weirdest and strangest I've also heard as well. Really, really creative, really, really fun. If you like pop music that's got a significant avant-garde edge and kind of an electronic bent to it, then check this out because it's really good shit. Hot Mulligan, one of the best, most exciting pop punk bands that are working
Fuck
right
yeah.
now, have continued their streak with the sound a body makes when it's still. I Everything that we said about their last album is true about this one as well. In fact, I think that this album may even be their best, and they've been on an upward trajectory as well. So again, if you're a big pop punk fan, please check that out as well. I think the last thing that we I will mention in this vein is oh yes, that's right. The next Panopticon album, Laurentian Blue, an album that's been teased for a really long time as being just the kind of Americana side of the sound. This band kind of delves in the sort of mix of Americana, bluegrass, and black metal is what makes Panopticon special. So, filing down their sound like this could be kind of divisive, but honestly, the production, the layering, the songwriting on here, it's just as good, it's just as quality as the second half of the album that they released in the 2010s, that half of it was black metal, half of it was kind of Americana. It's just as good as that release was. It's one of my favorite releases from the band. And this kind of continues in that trajectory. I don't think it quite has the dynamism of their other stuff, but as somebody who's been looking forward to this part of this release cycle, I walked away quite pleased from it. And yeah, that's about it. So now we can get into
I have something to talk about, actually. Something that
oh,
I did last week. I went to
ooh,
Chicago and saw
mm.
the one, the only Black Parade.
Oh
I was
yeah,
at the
that's
Black
right.
Parade show. I'm going to send you the footage. You can put the footage on the screen. But I just want to give a quick like concert review.
Please.
Um, Amazing, lovely, wonderful show. Devo opened, fantastic performance,
That's so
fantastic set
sick.
list.
That's
They
so
were
sick.
so awesome. They've still got it, and I love that for them. Really vibrant performance, really energetic guys, really fun, really funny performers. The Black Parade show was interesting because they bring in a lot of the operatic stuff that Gerard is pretty clearly influenced from The Wall, because they give the Black Parade a much more fascistic undertone to this kind of iteration of the performance, which wasn't necessarily the case in like the original music videos or the original live show. So they're doing something a little bit different with the aesthetic, the pacing, the presentation of the whole thing. They got all this merch that's all this lettering that's written in this kind of weird language that they invented to be like the Black Parade has been taken over by fascists or whatever. But no, it's really good. They do the entire Black Parade album, and then they transition to a second stage where they can play like the greatest hits from all the other records. And then fucking Billy Corgan gets on stage and they do Bullet with Butterfly Wings to end the set. And something about that.
The world is a
There's a
vampire.
vampire.
Sent to drain.
Wonderful show. Wonderful show.
That's that just the fact that you got to see a stage in which was shared by Billy Corgan and Frank Iero at the same time. It's like you just watched two of the best people alive that play their respective instrument in the same place at the same time. Fuck you, maybe a little bit, tiny bit, tiny bit.
You can be jealous. It's okay.
I am.
Bourbon and Beyond is this weekend, so I'll have more footage for next episode. I'll get that hot Benson Boone footage for you.
And I'll get that hot Lucy Dacus footage for you.
Oh, that's right. Jake, dreams of being dust.
The world is a beautiful place, and I'm no longer afraid to die. If you want a catching up to speed with how we feel about this band, boy, do I have the video for you because a friend of the channel, Zach, Riley, and myself, some years back, did a discography breakdown of The World is a Beautiful Place, I'm No Longer Afraid to Die's discography, and that was already after the fact that in 2021 they released their most recent album before this, Illusory Walls, which is somewhat notable, at least if you ask me anyway, because I consider Illusory Walls to be my one, two, three, third favorite album of all time. My favorite emo album, my favorite prog record, second favorite album of this decade thus far, only behind the Lord and Savior Phoebe Bridgers' Punisher. This is a band I have an immense respect and deep appreciation for. Even some of their releases that haven't really caught on with people, like The World is a Beautiful Place, I'm No Longer Afraid to Die, is one of those bands that like I love the most that is simultaneously like the least amount of people actually give a shit about because of many different like cultural things, the way that fourth and fifth wave emo have been discussed online, lots of stuff that we get into in that episode in which we talk about them. Go check that out. But I have been looking forward to a new album from them for a while now because they have been teasing singles for like a year and a half now. And the notable thing about the last World is a Beautiful Place album is that it was a hard right turn sound wise, is that these guys were people who were real pioneers of a newer wave of the emo movement with their album Whenever, If Ever. And that was what put them on the map. And it was a kind of combination of post rock and emo. And they had this real sensibility to them where they were a band of a community of people. This is a band that contained at one point maybe 15, 20 members, but has kind of gone through some different lineup changes over the years and their sound has kind of evolved. But Illusory Walls came after a long period of silence from the band and showed them delving into progressive rock and alternative metal and even post metal in places, combining that with their traditional emo sensibilities in a way that I don't think anyone was prepared for. It wasn't wholly unprecedented, but at the same time, it was not something that anybody would have predicted happening. And I think the sound fit them like a glove. The sound's been kind of pioneered and spearheaded by one of the band members, Chris Teddy, who's been on the production end of things for a little while now, who is also producing this. His kind of genre sensibilities have been sort of steering the band forward for the last couple of years. And those singles that we've gotten recently sort of signified a shift where they were going deeper into alt metal and hardcore and just leaning heavily into more metallic influences. And this was a really interesting prospect for me because I was like, well, yeah, I'm interested in these things. These sounds are cool, and I think this band can definitely do this. And lo and behold, Dreams of Being Dust here is fully just a alt metal hardcore emo album, which again is not necessarily something I would have predicted that this band was capable of, but they fully commit here and basically give us the closest thing we've gotten to a traditional Mars Volta album since, God, the debut, I guess. And what we have here is them continuing their trajectory of also talking about increasingly relevant, increasingly political topics with their kind of trademarked, very strange contemporary lyrical occupations. And this album ends up being a listen that Whew, I won't lie. This album's a rough one to listen to. These guys have never shied away from the fact that they are basically a bunch of really, really aggressively left-leaning, borderline communist punks. And that has never been more apparent than on an album like Dreams of Being Dust, because we're talking about a lot of modern issues, and Illusory Walls talked about those issues as well, but it was more talking about through the lens of modernity, he was just talking about what it's like to survive as a young person these days and, the kind of shit that you have to go through. And it was filtering it through a sort of fantasy, almost like Tolkien-esque or even Dark Souls illusory walls. That's the kind of the sort of filter that they're talking about modern issues with. And on here, that's leaned into even harder, and it's kind of a little bit less about survival and a lot more about fighting back. These guys have, again, they've always been very, very heavily political in their messaging, but I've never felt it stronger than I have on Dreams of Being Dust, where, things like the wealth gap and income inequality and lots of things are directly addressed on here, albeit through a slightly slanted, almost strangely literal lens on some of these songs here, and also topics like the conflict over in Israel and Palestine is also addressed on here in ways that feel very, very urgent, very, very direct. The concept of witnessing a genocide through your phone screen essentially is a topic that is probed on here multiple times, and just the idea of resistance and what have you. And I won't lie, like, this is an album that's sound I really, really enjoy and that I really, really respect, but because of its lyrical subject matter and poignancy, I find it a little bit difficult to keep coming back to this album. It's a compliment on the one hand that I think that they're handling this material very, very well. They've got a lot of family members who are like established radicals and like writers of really like important leftist and immigrant sort of issues, and like that really does feel like it's the case here, but it also is just like, wow, this is heavy in both sense of the word. Like there are lots of songs on here like Wiblet or Captagon that's lyricism is just legitimately kind of difficult to listen to if you've been paying attention to things that are going on in the news as of late. And while, again, this is not something that is new, it has never felt more potent or urgent or, generally speaking, kind of helpless. This is an album about feeling like you cannot do anything to help the suffering that is obviously being thrust right in front of you. And I find it very well handled, but I also find it very, very unpleasant to reckon with in a way I haven't felt since their album before they did Illusory Walls. So I'm really, on the one hand, I respect and enjoy the sound they're going for here. I love the hardened, kind of metallic edge this has. Chris Teddy's production sensibilities have always been in keeping with this alt metal sound, and I think that the vocals on here are really up to the task when it comes to just gnarled angry fucking rage. We've got the traditional sort of trope with this band of saving the sort of longer kind of song for the last, the kind of the album closer that really brings everything home and is kind of a little bit more musically ambitious in the form of For Those Who Will Outlive Us. I'm really, really pleased with this album on a creative level, but it is just something that, woof, I found very difficult to swallow. So how was it being just kind of thrust into, I'm guessing this is probably your first interaction with this band.
Yeah, I definitely had intentions to listen to Illusory Walls back when you initially reviewed it and just never got around to it. But this, I went into not really knowing what to expect because, I didn't check the genre tags before I went into it, but I was expecting, post-hardcore, avant-garde, brave, adventurous, hippy dippy, wooloo wooloo woola. However, one of the biggest benefits of this album has for me is that it's actually fairly instrumentally and structurally straightforward for the majority of the time.
Very much so.
Um, the lyrics are where this album is at its most challenging, at its most abstract, and at its most ambitious. It's kind of the inverse of the last Godspeed You album, where that one uses its central concept, its title, its names of musical movements to create detail of what the music is trying to do with an absence of lyricism.
Hmm.
Whereas this, the abstractions of the lyricism allow the most straightforward moments in its depictions of human suffering and the psychological responses to human suffering to shine through by playing things mostly straight on the instrumental front. I'm thinking of like the first track, Dimmed Sun, is a
Mm.
pretty straightforward song, but one that has these big striking images. Where is it? Fell through the tomb, the cages left grids of tan on our backs. I saw a hanging while I hid from disease, and then going down a little bit, there's that ending couplets of the trees gave us crosses to hang one another, the tears of the mother give the seeds water. Like it gets very surreal, even in its specificity of this is an album about the current moment and feeling this inability to do anything about the current moment due to your, sociological position. It's an album about struggling to take action in many, many ways. And what I've noticed, because there's been a lot of good art that reckons with this feeling in this decade, I wonder what's going on in the world that might inspire such recurring strokes of genius in artistry, is
R.I.P. Bozo.
I'm only being pithy about this because if I try to unfurl it for too long, I'll just get really depressed and this is not going to be fun to talk about anymore.
Yeah,
But
right. That's the kind of the worry that I had going into talking about this. Like I didn't know how to meaningfully unpack it without just getting real fucking bummed out. But like in its own respect, that is its own, compliment. But I want to put for like front and center that I think that this is a really like this is one of the most brave and adventurous acts working today, continuing in an upward trend of just taking risks and proving that they have the mettle and the sort of writing chutzpah to back up this ambition that they have. And I'm relieved that they were able to take this kind of plunge into this sound and still have it be, pulled off and received like moderately well. Like these guys have never been like super duper fucking popular or anything, but they make albums that are designed to age really really well. And on the off chance that some of the band members are watching because they have watched our stuff previously in the past, they very, very kindly complimented us when we talked about Infinite Josh, which was our song of the year in 2021. They were kind enough to listen to our words on that. So let me just say thank you all for listening and thank you for making some incredible music. I look forward to being able to listen to more of your stuff in the future that makes me want to kill myself a little bit less than this album does.
and I hope whoever's watching takes that part as a compliment.
Because it is. I mean, they did write an album where I think the most gutting line I've heard on any album this year is "Love is just loss before it happens," and it's like, oh, fuck, god damn it, man. But
There's some
still,
real moments of instrumental ferocity on here, especially in the second half that really got to me. Like the last half of Auguries of Guilt. God,
mm,
the playing, the like
mm,
instrumental back and forth that happens in the second half of that song, the drum solo in the last minute of Coptagon, which is maybe my favorite song on this,
great
from
song.
both a lyrical and instrumental perspective. That is where like I felt like I got what they were trying to do with this project altogether the most on Coptagon.
Definitely.
Captagon, is that how you pronounce it?
Cap,
I can't.
something,
Capta. It is
something like
Captagon
that.
is how it's spelled. But God, December 4th, 2024, the fucking lyrics on this. God tells me that I wasn't worth the meat.
Ugh, man, when you know that shit is about to hit hard when a World is a Beautiful Place song is just nothing but a date, you're like, oh fuck, this is where it's happening, brother. Here
It's
we
over.
go.
It's over. But no,
I,
I found I similarly to you, I found this in the best way I could describe it, interminable, impenetrable,
it's
of
it's
just like
it
how do you talk about how music like this makes you feel without just getting into the like Well, look around you, man.
It's the best compliment I can afford them is that they are one of the few bands to talk about contemporary issues like this where they have a line that directly talks about the idea of echo chambers and phone screens, where I did not immediately groan out loud and be like, "Oh God, another phone screen bad album." Ugh. Like, to me, this is how you do that kind of album. It doesn't necessarily mean I'm going to love listening to it. It does help that the production on this is, again, kind of a knockout. Like, I love the way that the bright kind of guitar tones are on this album when they're not like, absolutely shredding. I just love how kind of buoyant and colorful they are. And again, those drum solos, like, they are demolishing the kit on this album. This band's kind of collective instrumental acumen is one of the most underrated qualities that they've always had, and that's front and center on this in a way that I couldn't be more pleased with. I love the dynamism of the multiple vocalists here, and they really get to showcase every part of their vocal range on here. Like, this is an album where it kind of feels like everything is constantly shifting in the way that a Mars Volta album, which again, my second or third favorite band of all time. I couldn't be a better hypothetical compliment for me, is that they are constantly shifting things up. The song structures on here are very adventurous, but like none of the songs will like drag for long periods of time. Like, this is an album that is constantly throwing you for a structural loop and keeping things interesting and, just like holding your attention super duper well. It's an album that I think I was genuinely shocked when I listened to the newest Deftones album and then listened to this immediately after and was like, wow, these albums sound a lot alike. Holy shit.
Yeah, and so to put a cap on The World is a Beautiful Place, this is an album that attempts to capture the moment, and I would argue does so very well. I want to give a special shout out to Beware the Centrist, which is the shortest
Mm.
song on here, and yet the one that gets me fired up the most with just how
D-
like accurate the sentiment is to how I'm feeling about so many things
oh,
lately.
yeah.
The idea of, the one who is still in the face of all of this is not one to be trusted.
Literally opens with, what the fuck are we to do here for the repair, but not the harm? Like, bars, 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 bars. This was released as a single early on, and again, I heard this, and they had never released a song that sounded fully like this. So when I heard it, I was just like, "Oh, are we going there?
Yeah,
Are we going there?"
going
And
straight into hardcore punk for that moment on the album is such a great choice too.
pistols or petitions, which pill did you take?
Fire.
Bars, bars, and we all know which pill took.
Oh my God. We're gonna end up on Fox News. God damn it.
Good. Fuck you, Sean Hannity.
You seen Fox? I was listening to that song last night. I was like, yeah, I have seen Fox. This shit sucks.
I hate this shit, bro.
Lisan Al-Gaib.
Lisan Al Gaib. But you see, Lisan Al Gaib would not think he is Lisan Al Gaib.
All
Most
right.
underrated line delivery of the decade. And now we're shifting to
Dreams
our
Being
next
Dust.
album.
Thumbs up.
Dreams Being Dust, absolute, huge,
Absolute.
huge, Hubes cosign, thumbs up. And now we're going to be talking about our next album, which is also a channel favorite artist who happened to release a new album in the last 2 weeks, and that is, of course, Earl Sweatshirt, very, very cheekily named Live, Laugh, Love. The last time we talked about Earl Sweatshirt on here was actually in his collaborative work that he released with the alchemist Voir Dire, or Voir, what was that
Voir
fucking
Dire.
Voir
Voir
Dire?
Dire.
Yeah, something I don't remember. It was a bit of a release that people kind of really got back on the sort of Earl train with, because the album he released before that, which we also covered, Sick, in 2022, I believe, was a record that came after a little period of Earl kind of disappearing from the spotlight for a bit. And that album didn't quite capture people in the way that his last few did. I was actually really into what that album was putting down. It was the like it was the most, and I say this as someone who has enjoyed every Earl project to some degree. It was the most awake and the most like, kind of energetic he had sounded on a release since, I mean, debatably Doris. And like I was just kind of relieved that like, for as amazing of an album as some rap songs is, I would really hate if his music continued to sound like that because it would have signaled that that dude was not doing well mentally, because that's not an album that you make when everything is going super great for you. So I was just kind of glad that it seemed to he seemed to be like aiming himself in a way that like echoed his artistic process, was kind of echoing the fact that he was doing a little bit better. There's a lot that's happened since some rap songs that like Earl's, become a father, and that's been a really pivotal point in his like most recent music. And his collaboration with The Alchemist was something that won back a lot of people. For me personally, I wasn't super into that release just because I will confess to being very hot and cold on The Alchemist production, and I don't really think that it suited Earl that well, but his pen has always been great. But I've been looking forward to seeing what just a next True Blue Earl album would sound like and what it would be. And on this record, I am pleased to report that this is the most I've enjoyed an Earl Sweatshirt album, maybe even since some rap songs. I don't know your history with Earl's music specifically, Jen, but I'm gonna go out on a limb, take a wild fucking guess, and say that you might be a fan of this Odd Future offshoot fella here. Maybe,
I'm
maybe.
certainly, I mean, I was a fan already. I haven't listened to everything, but I am a fan of some rap songs. So maybe I have a bad impression of what his overall portfolio looks like in the grand scheme. But going into this album basically blind, not even knowing that it was going to come out, seeing it was only 25 minutes across 12 songs, I was a little bit befuddled.
Mm-hmm.
I thought, what are we doing here? Is this going to be, well, because I just listened to the West Side Gun album, which is a very
Mm.
similarly paced record where no song is longer than like 2.5 minutes. And so I'm like, okay, what is this structure gonna do for Earl? And the answer to that question is, oh, he's doing that because he's making his most laid back album
Mm-hmm.
that I've heard so far from him. This is surprisingly upbeat, surprisingly reserved and confident lyricism from Earl, and he's kind of resting on his laurels a bit, which feels like a strange place for him to be artistically, not a place I ever thought he would go, but it makes sense immediately as soon as you hear the kind of production that he's writing. Some very, very vibrant jazz rap production. Just him being slightly offbeat with the vocal sample on the first track, GSW versus SAC, gave
Yeah.
me a great idea of what I was in for with this.
You can hear him smiling on this song. Like you literally can hear him in the booth being like, "Yeah, man, yeah." It's like it's really infectious.
You can hear him like rapping through a grin on several points on this album, and it's infectious. Like I've been
Mm-hmm.
listening to this all week, and such a joyous record about just feeling like you're in your element, feeling like you're on top of things, feeling like nothing is in your way right now. And it was a surprisingly refreshing kind of emotional place to be in while listening to new music lately. I don't feel like that's something that we've been talking about a lot with our new releases on this show. And so hearing an album that's just kind of 25 minutes of a guy feeling himself has been pretty
Yeah.
refreshing, really.
Yeah, like as somebody who has kind of like I've been a fan of Earl for a really long time now. Like some rap songs was what got me into him. And I remember listening to that and just being like I couldn't believe, and to some extent still can't believe, that that album was as revered and as popular as it was, because you listen to it and it's like it sounds like a man having a nervous breakdown over production that sounds like radio waves that you captured from hell. Like, there is nothing about that album that is accessible. There's nothing about that album that isn't really challenging and really esoteric, and just like it is a pure vibe kind of release. And the fact that everyone latched onto it so hard was like kind of evidence that hip hop was in a cool, interesting place in the late 2010s, that that was even something that people were willing to give the time of day. But I was also like, again, like I mentioned, I was just like, I hope that this is something that he can turn himself from, because that's a very dark album where he's dealing with a lot of dark things. And I feel like this release here, Live, Laugh, Love, is almost like it is in a dialogue with his odd future compatriot who released an album last year like Chromacopia, where we talked about, when we talked about that album, we talked about how it feels like there is now a trend of the hip hop maturation record, where, rappers who started off their careers, in their 20s, super duper young, really, really prolific, have now suddenly taken a bit of a turn now that they're a little bit older, now that they've done some living and have some real life experience behind them. Now they're making albums that really reflect their growth as a human being. And I feel like Lift, Laugh, Love fits pretty snugly into that rubric, as this is an album of Earl being like, I am, watching a lot of, shit move in the world right now, but I've got to tear myself away from it. I've got to do me. He's kind of on his Mr. Morale shit, where it's just, I'm trying to, put the expectations behind me. Earl's a guy who's been grappling with very heavy expectations since he was quite young. For those who don't know, both of his parents are like incredibly like revered, well-spoken, scholarly people who, like, Earl, I believe, lost his father some years ago, but like he was a politician and his mother was like a really like acclaimed like writer and civil rights activist. So Earl's a guy who kind of has the weight of, like thrust upon him of just the like, you better live up to that black excellence, man, or else. So he's been kind
Yeah,
of
like
trying
isn't his
to
mom one of the people that like pioneered critical race
critical race
theory?
theory. Yeah, like
Yeah, like
literally.
actual critical race theory,
Like,
not the bullshit that's made up on Fox.
no, like actually, like Earl is a dude who comes from a lineage of like legit black radicals, and like has been trying to grapple with that and trying to sort of reckon with that, and to some extent put that into his music. And I feel like a lot of, you can feel him sort of just like coming into his own, and like there's, lines on here where I never thought that like an Earl Sweatshirt album, like, the guy who made an album like I Don't Like Shit, I Don't Go Outside, which in some respects is kind of an even darker album than some rap songs, but like, you hear an album like that, which is like borderline kind of edgy and sort of like an album that a very young person makes when they're struggling with things like substance abuse and like, impulsive thoughts and what have you. But like now I'm hearing him talk about how he sees his father's face in his child, and I was like, oh, oh, that's unexpectedly like kind of heartwarming. And like, because of the production on this album and the tone that his rapping takes, there's kind of a stoner rap vibe to what he's putting down on here, which God, one of my favorite like sub types of hip hop is this kind of like laid back, sort of chill sort of approach. But like he also has the beats, the kind of tactile production to back it up. I mean, beats on here, like on stuff for Tourmaline, for example, are just like, this is some of the most vibrant production that Earl has ever rapped over. And some of the best just like writing, I feel like, comes up on maybe my favorite track on the album, Crisco, which is just like this fucking, this man, like an underrated technical rapper, to be sure, just because his delivery doesn't immediately signal like, oh, this dude is fucking spitting heat. He's laid back and he's got a kind of
He's doing those A
lackadaisical.
B C D rhyme flows, man.
Yeah, like,
But
this is
he's
not.
got you're correct. He's a very unkempt but very technically proficient. It's a strange, it's like a southpaw almost of like technical
Yeah.
proficiency. Of it's not something that you usually expect, but if you know how to recognize it, you see the pattern, right? But I just think my
Oh yeah.
favorite lyrical moment on this is on Crisco, where he just says, "I'm who the scale tips for." Uh,
Yeah, that's a great one.
that hits, and that oscillating vocal sample on this song. You're right. This might also be my favorite on the album.
Crisco, I think, is one of those songs where it kind of like really hones in on like the parental aspect of this. It's just where the comparison started flowing with me for Chromacopia. He's like literally talking about things like changing diapers and stuff, and but he's also got like the lines like the ones we lost and all the ones behind me. Pops was kind of janky. His replacement beat the future out of me. me. Like some reckoning with some really complex, like familial shit, and like it's just it's very refreshing to see Earl speaking with this level of clarity and this level of stability, and it's like it's something that I thought like it was why I really enjoyed Sick, because it was really him feeling like he was taking back control of the narrative, because like some rap songs is one of those sort of like tortured artist albums where it's just like it really feels like you had to go through a dark night of the soul, and this trajectory, it was like I was a little unsure of where we were going to be headed with Earl, because like there was something about voir dire that I was just kind of like Earl's formula of this kind of like shorter album with the song structures that are a little bit loose, that like I was like maybe he's kind of hit his limit with this kind of album now. But Live Laugh Love kind of proves me wrong in the best way, honestly.
Just how warm this album feels.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's like a warm blanket of, stoner rap. It's wonderful. I love the instrumentals on this. I love the sitar on Forge. I love
Ah, yeah.
Gamma sounds like a track from fucking the People Under the Stairs album.
Ooh, that's a good comp.
Live or Live, however you want to
Yeah,
pronounce it.
yeah.
It's a bit of a double entendre.
Hmm.
That song sounds incredible.
I
Heavy
remember when
metal.
I ain't won it, I prayed harder. They hooked on the phonics. Bars.
Heavy metal, just with all that refrain of like, oh, I released it. That's where the
Yeah.
the album conceptually really comes together of like, no, I let go of all of the shit that has been holding me back all these years. I may have even lost some of the good in the process, but like that's what I had to do to get to where I can, make something like this and be a good father and do all this stuff. Like I had to release it. A sentiment that I just got a lot of resonance out of. It's not something I
Yeah.
expected to get from somebody like Earl. Don't always know what to expect out of somebody like Earl, out of artists of his profile, artists with history like his, but just the idea of being able to acknowledge like all of the things that you've had to kind of leave behind in order to become just a person who's able to function. We've seen that a lot in like big post-COVID albums by these big artists, but
Mm-hmm.
it kind of hits differently every time. And this coming at the ninth hour of this album tells me a lot about how Earl has been processing and all that as well, right? He
For
doesn't
sure.
say, I had to release all this stuff and now you get to hear this great album that's a product of me releasing it. And it's like, no, you get everything else first. And then at the end, you get the, I couldn't have done this if I hadn't, which is a very different kind of statement.
He lets it speak for itself.
Yeah.
He trusts his audience, and like the success of Earl Sweatshirt is just a reassurance that hip hop and alternative music are in a somewhat healthy space. Because if we are promoting and putting this dude on a pedestal, even though he is so obviously so left of the dial and so like obviously anti-commercial, like yeah, this reassures me that hip hop is really in a great place. Like again, we said it when we reviewed that Clips album, but like it really feels like every single week we have gotten more and more reassurance this year that hip hop is now on an upward trajectory from being kind of knocked off its top pedestal there for like a year and a half, where it felt like maybe it sort of lost its footing culturally, but now it really came back with a vengeance, and this is just further evidence to the point.
At all layers of the music attention economy, hip hop is doing very well again.
Yes, absolutely.
So, Live, Laugh, Love. Big thumbs up.
Big thumbs up.
Wonderful stuff. Wonderful
Absolutely.
music this week.
So,
You want to know how my killing somebody went?
you're on a path in the woods.
With Jonathan Sims.
So, on our last episode, we covered David Cage and Quantic Dream's Detroit Become Human. And as a kind of counter narrative to that, I wanted to present an example of what I think games like Detroit Become Human are shooting for, but maybe don't quite hit the mark on. And I wanted to also showcase an example of maybe, indie games that are a little bit left of the dial being able to accomplish this with a somewhat more limited toolkit. So I recommended Slay the Princess. So I don't know if you knew anything about this going in, but honestly, I feel like we should just head right into what were your expectations for what this was, and how did you end up feeling about this little experience?
I had gotten the inkling that this was some sort of a subversive visual novel, like a visual novel, but not one that you expect, that's going to play around with some story conventions. And so I was thinking back of like, I'm not really a visual novel player. I had Doki Doki Literature Club ruined for me back in the day, but
I
that
hate
game.
that that happened to so many people because like there that was a moment in, art and pop culture that was truly irreplicable. Like experiencing the left hook that was that game is something that I feel like a lot of people are just never going to forget.
Right. But the thing about Doki Doki Literature Club is that it buries the lead very deeply in its
Oh
run.
yeah.
Like if you're playing that game, it takes a while before you would suspect that you're doing something out of the ordinary or going to be experiencing something that's going to be playing with genre conventions and not just doing
Hmm.
something pretty simplistic with some, unique, useful core mechanics for the visual novel style. It takes a while before you get to any kind of like, oh, something weird is going on here with Doki Doki Literature Club on a kind of meta narrative,
Hmm.
genre play level. But Slay the Princess does not do much, doesn't put much effort into burying the lead of what it's going to be. And so going in, I wasn't sure what to expect because I was like, okay, I know some shit is gonna get like turned around on me at some point, and I'm gonna have to like do one thing, but then it's secretly another thing. But I truly was not prepared for how quickly the player is meant to realize that none of what is going on in front of them is what it seems.
Hmm.
And so it becomes a really interesting exercise where, okay, the premise of the game is that the player character is being guided by this narrator who's been sent to slay a princess that's chained up in the basement of a cabin in the woods. You make choices, you can make dialogue choices, you can make action choices, and there are different like plot paths that go on afterwards where the game will kind of reset itself very frequently and the cycle will change, but you as the player will obviously have the memory of what you went through, and you have dialogue options that represent that meta knowledge because the kind of player character dialogue is not meant to be necessarily a character itself, but you as the player speaking to the characters in a weird sort of way,
Hmm.
because the game makes it very clear in how its characters kind of interplay with each other. You, the player, and the choices that you are making are a part of the dialogue that the other characters are engaging with. So you have the narrator and you have the voice of the hero at the start, who is ostensibly the voice of the character that you are embodying and controlling, but that voice is also in a dialogue with you. And so it becomes very strange. The perspective, the question of point of view comes up very quickly in this game's runtime of like, who am I actually playing? What is the intended state of play here? What is the motivation of the voice of the hero? What's the motivation of the narrator? What's going on with the princess? Why is there all this time loop stuff happening that seems to pile in on itself? But what ultimately ends up happening is that this game becomes a very densely layered meta-textual creation love story about these two entities who are using the kind of subversive damsel in distress narrative cycle and refurbishing it and redoing it and building on it over and over and over again to ultimately create this kind of character portrait between two beings who are in love and can't stop hurting each other. And so it just becomes a really interesting love story. The game describes itself as that in the opening text crawl, right? There's this whole, there are horrors to be found within, but da 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 da. This is a love story. And so I thought, okay, so who's the love story about? And it's about you. It's about the player building a love story with the titular princess character. And so the experience of playing this game very quickly became the freedom in what is going to happen and what decisions I can make and how it would affect the story in a way that I described negatively in Detroit Become Human when I felt like I had too much power over the characters.
Hmm.
That sentiment becomes extremely effective in Slay the Princess when you know that you have all the power over this character and the voices and the narrator can only sort of guide you in certain directions, but you playing this being have the most agency in the room, even with this kind of all-powerful antagonist character who can also, defy the laws of reality and taunt you directly and all this stuff that could very easily become very hokey and very like what if Tumblr made up a game, but this shit just works so well on me. I'm a sucker for this like very simple deconstructionist stuff of video game narratives. It's why I love stuff like the Stanley Parable, and it's why
I was
stuff
gonna
like
mention
Doki
that,
Doki
yeah.
Literature Club calls to me of like
Hmm.
something that plays around with the humor inherent to that sort of a concept as well, because this game doesn't get bogged down in its flowery language about, creation and love and da 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 da, as much as it does just express how offbeat and funny this concept is at so many points. Like you have, based on all the different endings that you get along a playthrough, you'll have different voices in your head that represent the different story paths that you took. So like if you
Hmm.
do something that causes your character to die and you mysteriously resurrect, you'll have like the voice of the cold, who's like a rationalist, it's gonna happen. So whatever we can
Cynical,
do,
like,
we can do. Yeah.
who cares? Whatever's gonna happen, happens. And then that, like, you'll eventually start having conversations with the people you collect based on the choices that you make, so that like there will be like a literal conglomerate of different personalities in your head arguing with each other about what you should do.
Yeah, and so you can also experience this with the being in the, oh, what's that fucking,
The sort
I'm
of
gonna,
the liminal space in which this game kind of like there is a level of unreality to this game setting that is very it's situational. It's there is a kind of established kind of dimensional focal point at which the game kind of loops back in on itself as being like this is the location. There's kind of what's the word that I'm looking for here? There's a I guess it's like it's its own pocket dimension.
yeah, it's a space where creation and change are meant to occur via the whims of these two powerful beings, the princess, or just known as she in certain parts of the game, and the player are essentially these two beings with godlike potential energy and ability to enact change, who are creating this space of the cabin in the woods and the Slay the Princess narrative as a way to explore kind of what they want the next world to look like. And so it becomes a very interesting examination of the idea of creativity, right?
Hmm.
How do you grow beyond the stock? How do you grow beyond the tropes that you came to recognize as a child, or the tropes that you came to sloppily remix as a burgeoning creative mind? How do you come to terms with what's come before you to prepare yourself for what you should be making next? And that's kind of what the whole game is about in a lot of ways. And I really appreciate the ethos that the game puts on the player to remember what they've done before and think about how they can create change to explore more of the game's potential paths, which the replay value on this is incredible. Like, even as I got to one of the endings earlier this week, I just put the game on today and started going through it again just to
Hmm.
see, like, how long would it take me to get a different ending, knowing what I know, if I do like this part first or do this part first, and what parts did I not catch? I went on the wiki and I saw some of the like, oh, I want to see how this scene plays out. What do I do to trigger this? And so in a way that Detroit Become Human kind of completely failed to entice me to explore potential future paths, this game got me excited to figure out like, oh, what did I miss? How can I go back and get it? Whether or not I'm disappointed by those things remained to be seen, right? The idea that I could be didn't stop me from doing it. Whereas while playing Detroit, I was just like, no, I think I got the best version of this story that I could give to
Hmm.
myself. But it also helps that the runtime on an individual playthrough of this game is not that long, that I felt like I was able to just go back in and be like, no, I want to see if I can pick up some things that I missed, or see if I can just, on a second playthrough, notice things that I missed the first time about the dialogue. Because the one moment where I was like, oh no, they're not bearing the lead with this at all. There's a line where the voice of the hero, the first time you go into the stairwell, is like almost as if she's the one in charge down here. And I'm like, oh no! Like we're just going right into it, huh? But they get a lot of mileage out of going right into messing with the concept of the game. And so I ended up getting a lot out of my experience with this. I was very pleasantly surprised. But how did you discover this? How did you discover it? What was your experience with it?
I believe it was Mr. John Super Catch Wolf Walsh that was streaming this game, and I took a like one look at an episode that he had uploaded of it, and I was like, this looks fascinating. I don't want to watch a single second of this because I want to experience it for myself. Because if there's one thing I've learned with games like this, if you watch just a little bit too much of something, you could have like an experience completely ruined for you just because you happen to absorb one ancillary detail that like totally like unravels everything and like the mystery of it completely disappears. Thankfully, that's not really super possible with this game because you're right, it does kind of really get into the thick of things really quickly. But I wanted to sort of experience it, and we had this moment where like Ree and I had an evening to ourselves, and we're like, hey, let's play this game together and let's see if we can get to the end. And we did. First thing I want to compliment this game on is that it is an indie game, and it does obviously like it is kind of visual novel-esque in presentation, and thus is like a little bit obviously limited. Like again, it does not have the endless budget that a game like Detroit Become Human supposedly does. It's, very much the different backgrounds that are going to be reused multiple times, even though I think the game actually does a great job at presenting the alternate pathways and alternate art in really interesting and fascinating ways that feels really new and really fresh up until the game is over, frankly. But I love the game's art style. I love the way everything is drawn, this kind of really sort of black and white, like kind of sort of
It's very
like
sketchbooky. It's very
sketch.
textured.
Yeah,
A lot of pencil marks on there. Like it's a very rough looking game.
but in a way that feels like it really suits the material at hand. And the atmospheric soundtrack is also very much in that kind of vein. Like its ability to adapt to the tone of a specific playthrough is really like really great stuff. Like there are pieces of ambient music in this that are utterly dread inducing. There is some that are really sweet and very like light, have these beautiful little light motifs. And then there are moments where there is just kind of a sort of absent kind of like staring into the void levels of horror, which is another way in which I really get on with this, is that there is a lot of horror that sort of seeps into this game as you keep playing it. But the moment I knew this game had me within its grasp was when you sort of end one of the specific routes that you're playing through. Is like the like you'll kind of play one way and you'll either die or kill the princess, reach an ending, and then do a kind of double up on that and then reach a sort of secondary ending. And then you get kind of transported to this sort of pocket dimension place. And you interact with this being that is sort of representative of the many different forms that the princess can take. And the way this is represented visually is remarkable. It breaks away a little bit from the game's typical visual style and becomes like wholly surreal and in many cases like just kind of terrifying. But there was a line that just really leapt out at me when you got to this. It's like you basically ask this being that's like it's got like this multiple faces, and it's just like and this like this very ominous music playing in the background, and you ask just like, what are you? And they respond, I am solitary lights in an empty city. And man, I've been thinking about that single line in just a purely evocative, imagistic sense. Like ever since I heard it, I was just like, oh man, like kind of gave me a chill down my spine. Like I still don't even fully understand what I think that means. And I don't think you're supposed to. There are lots of moments in which that mode of the game, when it aims for that kind of really ephemeral and strange otherworldly tone, when you kind of get a peek behind the curtain at what's really going on in this universe, that it's legitimately quite effective in ways that I didn't really see coming. And you do end up forming a strange kind of bond in a way that feels very deconstructive, in the same way that something like Doki Doki Literature Club is. Because one of the ways that I think is kind of underrated about a game like Doki Doki Literature Club is that that game is very much a takedown of the genre it belongs to. In that visual novels, specifically like anime visual novels, are, I mean, they're not all like this, but they have a pretty well-earned reputation as being pieces of media that are incredibly fucking pandery, that very much appeal to a kind of male gaze and appeal to a kind of a certain demographic that relies on specific fetishistic tropes to keep people interested in. And Doki Doki Literature Club very smartly, like, you go back and play that game and it's just like like go back and watch our playthrough of it that we did years ago, and it's literally all of
One
us
of my
who've
favorite things you've ever done.
basically the funniest thing on this entire channel,
Abolish the
honestly.
proletariat.
Wait. It is kind of like it's those of us who played the game before are constantly like, oh my god, this fucking narrator sucks. Like, you don't immediately notice just how awful the main character, the main narrator in that game is, because he's very tropey. He's very indicative of the genre. He is basically an avatar for all forms of fiction like that. And then you go back and replay it and you're like, oh, this is taking the piss. Like, this guy fucking blows. I hate this dude. And it's when it pulls its little swerve, its subversion. I think it's actually like, I think that specifically that game is like the quietly genius thing about it is the way that it handles its very sensitive mental health topic, which, there is plenty of very academic debate to be had as to whether or not Doki Doki Literature Club's Southpaw hit that it throws at you midway through the game, whether or not that is tasteful or even ethical. And frankly, I've heard many very convincing arguments that it isn't. And frankly, I kind of think that it isn't. But I respect its ability to go there because it's uncompromising in the way that it's like the way it portrays the main character trying to help, Sayori as she devolves into this mess of like, suicidal tendencies and what have you. Like, this is the way that modern people think that they're supposed to respond to someone in their life who is going through this. And it is a textbook example of what not to do. Like, you could use the conversation that you have with Sayori in her room in that game. You could use that as a textbook example with a therapist of like, this is how you don't talk to a suicidal person. Like, this is how you should not speak to somebody like this, because you are putting all of the agency of their situation on them. You are placing all of the pressure and all of the cards, and you are handing it to them, and you are like, it is pressure that they are not equipped to handle, and your support, your overwhelming, like, oh, you're, like, I'm here to help you, like, that just adds to the weight. And I find that aspect really interesting, and how it provides a character portrait of the other people inside that game. And I think that this game does an interesting job with that too, of the characters of the princess. And the one thing I want to compliment this game on first is the voice acting. The voice acting in this, I feel like, is as imperative to the experience as something like Disco Elysium's voice acting is to Disco Elysium. Another game that honestly I feel like narratively has a lot in common with Slay the Princess, even if it's not wholly obvious how or why instantly. But like the whole characters arguing in their head about this, it's very emblematic of the same thing. But the voice acting really brings this to life, and it's done by two people. Voice acting is done entirely, like the heroes' many voices and personalities are voiced by Jonathan Sims, and the princess herself is voiced by a voice actress named Nicole Goodnight, who Nicole Goodnight delivers literally one of my favorite voice acting performances I've ever heard in any video game. Like, she is so adaptive into the
Hmm.
princess's many different forms in ways that are, on a playthrough by playthrough basis, legitimately fucking terrifying, um a little
A little bit horny.
seductive. There, look, listen. If you're a type of person that is very into very powerful women,
There's one of these.
there's a few of these. there's a few of these branching pathways that will do something to you. Like there's like the delivery of two words in this game, which is literally just "Hello, killer," and you're like, "Whoa, whoa, is that where we're going?" Because I
Wait a
didn't know we
minute.
were stopping on that train station, but we are. But like there is a back and forth between these two presences that becomes so fascinating to witness, and it ends up being very, very comparable to something like Undertale. Now, Jen, I know I asked you about this before. You know most of what there is to know about
I
Undertale.
know a lot of the beats, yeah, but I
Yeah.
never actually played the
So
thing.
the thing I find, like, I find these games very comparable in how these games break the fourth wall, essentially, and become about the idea of playing video games, and specifically, like, the idea of you as a player seeking out completionist runs. Like, the idea of playing a game and seeing all the content just to see it. Because Undertale is notably a game that is incredibly fucking hostile to this idea. If you want to see all of the content that there is to see in Undertale, you have to go through an incredibly punishing, incredibly fucking unpleasant way of playing that video game that, like, at every single turn, the game is just like, you should stop. Like, this isn't going to be fun. You're not going to have a good time. All these characters that you came to know and love in your other playthroughs, they are suffering because you're doing this. You should stop. You should leave them be. And your obsessive desire to see all of the routes of a playthrough of a game is the only thing that keeps you going forward. Like, I am somebody who I didn't play through the genocide run in Undertale because, frankly, that is not fun. It's not fun. I don't want to do that. I like my skeleton sons. I don't want to see them hurt. But the game is constantly like, this is the plan. Like, there is a path to go on and there is shit to see, but like, what is the consequence of that? Like, what do you as a person get out of that? It's Toby Fox looking modern video gaming and the state of, like, just how we are expected to interface with this artistic medium in the unique way that it presents itself. And it is him going, hey, this isn't healthy, and maybe we should, like, apply a bit of real world empathy into the way that we interface with art like this. And Slay the Princess does something incredibly similar, but in the way that it actively encourages you to see all of its content, because the goal ends up being like, if you basically end up collecting the different routes, you build a more well-defined portrait of the presence that is within this game that is communicating with the player that makes the relationship more interesting. So, you know, you're like there's the one route where basically the lover route, basically, where you end up being like, yeah, I get the happy ending kind of, except for like the very end where you get swallowed into the fucking void, which is but it's such an interestingly, like, it's such an interesting tone to that specific playthrough, because it's like the music's very light and airy, and like there's a romantic wistful tone to all of the dialogue. And even when she cuts off her own fucking hand to get unchained from the wall, she's like, whatever, man, let's go. Yay!
Yay!
And then it's
The
just like,
little like Crayola drawing that you get at the end of that if you do it is so funny.
it's so, and the entire time the narrator's just like, well, you've doomed the world, asshole. And like, you get to basically, like, the game does a great job at burying the specific lead of just like, who is the narrator, though? Like,
I
what are they
loved
mean?
that idea. I loved the narrator, the mystery of who the narrator is.
And like at the end of the day, the narrator ends up being Monica from Doki Doki Literature Club, basically, and that Monica ends up being the kind of proxy voice for the most hostile tendencies of the writers, of the game developers, of who is presenting you this narrative and why they are putting it in front of you and why they are encouraging you to do the things that you're doing, because you end up realizing that it's like the princess, the entity buried within this game, and you are uncovering more about yourselves and each other, and you're drifting away from this guy. But it also is like, wait a minute, who are you specifically? Because you end up getting little tiny glimpses of just like, whoa, my hand there. What the fuck? Why is he like a scaly lizard man? Huh? What the fuck's going on here? And you sort of get that it's like, oh, it's just like you in the, it's like it's pulling from the trope that like you are the monster in this story. You are traditionally speaking, you are the antagonist. It speaks to the kind of deconstructionist angle of what this game is getting at. And I love how it manages to kind of be about video games without kind of being super overt about it, because like I love the writing in something like the Stanley Parable, which I think is a very comparable experience. Like the rhetorical arguments that you get in with the narrator of this game and the decision making that you go down, and just like based on whether or not you're going to listen to him, how you're going to argue with him, it's very comparable to the narrator in the Stanley Parable, and whether or not you end up listening to him, whether or not you end up defying him and all that stuff. It's very clever in the same way that that is. It's very self-conscious, but it is also like revealing in the sense that like there's an agenda here. Like this person, this entity within this game wants something from me, but I don't know what exactly.
Yeah, and they play this masterfully because every time the loop resets, the narrator, if you try to tell the narrator that you've been experiencing this before, the
He's like,
narrator acts like he doesn't know what you're talking about and just like kind of downplays it. And so you're getting literally gaslit by
mm-hmm.
the
And you're
narrator
like,
in
is
the
he
best way
actually
possible. But yeah,
aware?
yeah, and so you're like, is the narrator actually aware of what's going on, or is he just, humoring me
Is he
to
fucking
get me
with
to
me?
go where I want it to go? But then you get to the end, and it's, oh, the narrator is a creation by you to be a challenge that you must overcome, right? You make this thing that represents your inability to think outside the box so that you test your ability to think outside the box.
It's literally you within the context of the game, you will structure out of the ether in order to have an experience with art. That's what the conflict of the game ends up being. And so once you collect all these different personalities and pathways and stuff, the final boss of this game, which I also just like the music that plays
Oh,
whenever you
lovely.
go into this dimension is just like, oh God, the ambient soundtrack in this is just exquisite. But once you get to like the kind of ending of this, the final boss of this game is like one of my favorite final bosses I think I've played through in a good long while, because it's not a boss, it's a rhetorical argument.
Yeah, you end up having a dialogue with the entity at the end once you've collected all or most of all the possible forms. Basically, just about now that we've amassed all this power, what are we supposed to do with it? Do you want to like attack and try to destroy the thing? Do you want to join the thing? Do you want to try to convince it to join your new understanding of the world and what they should do? It becomes this kind of ideological argument about what their next form of existence is going to look like. It's very cosmologically interesting to think about as a myth, as a narrative
Hmm.
myth, right? This game is playing with a lot of mythology, a lot of fable style storytelling, and
I
so it
love
makes
that shit.
sense that the final moment is not a fight like so many of the routes are. You engage in direct combat with the princess, but is instead a dialogue. It's a romantic argument about the future of this couple, basically.
It makes me think, and I only just now thought about this, it makes me think of one of my favorite films of the decade so far, David Lowery's The Green Knight. It
Oh,
plays with fables and
oh,
tropes of storytelling in this. It's like this is basically the entire plot line of Dev Patel, Alicia Vikander, and Joel Edgerton. It's like that segment of the film distilled into a choose your own adventure game. And like, but it's like and it's kind of the ending of that movie and the ending of this are very comparable, because it's literally asking the audience, what do you do next? And it ends up being a piece of writing that's about like a piece of video game writing that's literally about like, again, it's like I drew the comparison to Undertale for this reason. It ends up being about what you will meaningfully take away from this experience and how you will carry it with you. It's just like it turns the lens in on the player in a really interesting way, and it becomes less about what's the final choice you're going to make and ends up being the theme of the game just ends up being how are you going to think about this experience when you're not experiencing this game anymore? Like, how are you going to remember it? What did you learn from it? In a way that's not like, South Park, I learned something today. Like, none of that
No, yeah.
bullshit.
The onus of the various endings really reflect the different potential emotional states of a player, right?
Hmm.
What will a player get out of this story? How many different ways can we sort of render these possible interpretations? How will the player be thinking about the princess as a character after they've experienced all of this? How will their feelings towards the narrator contribute to their final decisions? It all it kind of does its best to render all possible interpretations as an element of its text in its options for final choices, final routes, end credit moments, where what will certain players get out of this experience becomes a question that doesn't just drive the creation of the thing, but it drives the thing itself.
Oh yeah. Oh, for sure. That's that I really I couldn't have put that better myself. Like the final boss sort of argument here is something that the game commits so thoroughly to that like and it's like the labyrinth of choices that can occur within this segment of the game. It feels like half of this game is hidden within this one interaction that you end up having. Like I've seen people go through this playthrough like after I finished it I'm just like what other ways can this end? And I like looked up, like streamers playing it and stuff, and I was just like, wow, I would not have expected that. Like it rewards you for like steadfastly committing to what you believe. It also rewards you to wavering and kind of like having yourself be convinced by the princess or the entity or whatever. It's just like she can end up persuading you a little bit more than you can persuade her, or the reverse is also possible. And I just think that there is so
Slaying
much
the princess with facts and logic.
I kinda, but like in a way, it's like with emotional intelligence rather than fucking like actual the facts and logic crowd. And
Right.
I think part of what also makes this so likable is that the characters themselves are written in such a way that like you kind of alluded to it, like a lot of it is being very humorous and very like self-aware, but like not in that irony pilled ass Gen
No,
Z fucking
definitely
like
not.
this is a very like that's why the interactions with like the entity are like they're so sincere feeling like they're a being that feels like it's meant to reflect the level of agency that a human being is supposed to have, but like described and relayed in a very cold way that's trying to be less cold. Like it's like the esoteric poetry in which this thing speaks feels like it is actively trying to get you interested in what it's talking about through its prose. And I think that that element of the writing is just absolutely genius. And the voice acting and the way that these voice actors have to bend their very malleable tones into whatever, incarnation of the characters that they end up playing. Like it's a really, really difficult task because again, these are two people who have to essentially play a sort of subcast of like almost a dozen, maybe even 2 dozen characters. And you just end up being really interested, like on a moment to moment level of just like, what's the next incarnation of the princess even going to be? And like I legitimately did get invested of just like, I like this character. She's a very likable presence, even when she is angry. She's still very reasonable in a lot of respects. And like when you have to end up doing things that suck, you feel like shit. You're just like, I don't want to stab her, but like, I do kind of have to. And then, you end up, it's just like sometimes that ends up biting you in the ass. And it's just the way that this game asks you to interact with it demands a lot more of you than video game narratives typically do. And I'm kind of at the point in my life where, you know, emergent narratives within games are so much more fascinating to me than just, play a video game, the video game stops to deliver a movie for 10 minutes, and then you play the video game after it ends, and then the video game gives you a movie. Because, like, 10 years ago, that was really where we were at. Like, when I started paying attention to video games as an artistic medium, it was basically 2013 was the point in which I feel like we as a culture shifted to where video games began to try and become into their own, but they stumbled a lot, is because we had the trifecta of Grand Theft Auto 5, BioShock Infinite, and The Last of Us. Three games that were hugely at the time put on a pedestal for their respective narratives and how they were, boundary pushing fucking The Last of Us meme of just being like, this is the Citizen Kane of video games. I remember that fucking buzz phrase being thrown around.
That was about
And
BioShock Infinite, actually. Oh,
was it?
somebody said that about BioShock Infinite.
Well, and it was like that ended up being the conversation around those games. And I feel like if you look back on that moment, that got a lot of people, myself included, to look at games a little bit differently. I look back on those three video games and I'm like, I don't really think any of those narratives have aged particularly well. Like, not really. Like, The Last of Us has aged fine, but in the respect that, like, I don't think, like, I think that The Last of Us is a very well told, very engaging story, but it's not a medium defining work, you know? Like, it's
Yeah,
not
it's definitely
something.
not as challenging to the state of the art form as it was held up to be. It's a very serviceable blockbuster, dark blockbuster narrative, you know?
Yes, like it's kind of why the success of the TV show doesn't surprise me. It's because all you had to do was just film the cutscenes, and that's what they did.
I was
And
gonna say
that's
all you had to do was figure out ways to film the action scenes.
Yes. And like again, I really do like the narrative and story of The Last of Us, but there is nothing about The Last of Us in which requires it to be a video game in order to tell its story. Like I think that it is enhanced if you play the game instead of watching the show. Like I think that it is more involving, but there is nothing about it that requires that you play it in the way that, like, honestly, like they were saying that about BioShock Infinite, when BioShock Infinite didn't even push the boundaries as much as the first BioShock game did, because that was a game where that is a game that ends up being about you playing the video game and what you have agency in, because a man chooses, a slave obeys. That's what it ends up being about. And then you have Grand Theft Auto 5, which is literally just, we threw the Sopranos into the sandbox game, here you go. And it's like, you look back and it's like, I don't feel like these really boundary pushing games really ended up defining what games are capable of in the way that Undertale, in the way that Doki Doki Literature Club, in the way that now Slay the Princess, or even games like, you're still seeing games that are blockbuster games like Baldur's Gate 3, for example, feels like it's still way further ahead of presenting you with that blockbuster narrative, but it's labyrinthine levels of decision making and choices, and like it's the commitment it has to its choose your own adventure style narrative. It's just like, I feel like that is the platonic good example of what video game storytelling is good at, not necessarily what defines games as a medium. But when I think of something that defines games as a medium, I think of shit like this.
Right. Yeah, I agree with all of this wholeheartedly. I think Slay the Princess is a great presentation of a postmodern video game story. I mean that in the most literal way possible, where the idea of a story itself is being deconstructed. And that's the point of the exercise, right? You're getting all these innovations in narrative design has become a very useful term of phrase, and I'm
Yep.
glad the narrative designer like job title is becoming more well respected in the video games industry
Mm-hmm.
because that's really fucking important. But the
Very.
idea of narrative design is where I think some of the praise for like Baldur's Gate 3 comes from. And well warranted. The narrative design of Baldur's Gate 3 is immaculate and extremely well done. But if you're looking for a purely, in a more pure to the definition sense, postmodern video game narrative, this is where I'm going to tell you to go. I had a great time with this. And as somebody who is interested in how video game narratives evolve with the times and how people who make games, we're finally to a point where people have come from like generations of game making, start
Yes.
making games.
Hmm.
And so I'm really interested to see the kind of challenges that those people who grew up on not just like pure tool shovelware like Atari Pong will be able
Yeah,
to do
yeah.
when they think about all the stuff that inspired them across all mediums and the video games that were able to take more from things like movies and television and music to create more grandiose experiences than your, Atari 2600 cartridge could fit. What's gonna happen when people who grew up on shit like Metal Gear Solid, Eternal Darkness, things like that, things that push the boundaries of video game storytelling,
Hmm.
especially in regards to the player's agency in that, the idea of the Ludo narrative. What happens when people who've had a whole generation's worth of games about that start making games? And this, I think, is a great example.
It's what happens when you get someone who makes a game who played games like, I think the earliest example of stuff like this can be found in something like Earthbound, where you have, which like Earthbound is almost like an example of borderline outsider art, because Shigesato Itoi was not a game developer and just decided to make one of the most seminal JRPGs of all time just to do it. And like some of that game has aged in a way that doesn't super complement the experience, but like a lot of the beats that it hits narratively, and a lot, especially the stuff that Mother 3 deals in, is like very form challenging in a way that you're like, oh, this is why we have Undertale. Because Toby Fox played this game and then was like, I want to do this, but for this. Like, the way I put it is that story, like the what makes video games cool, and like the potential that's within them. Say you're playing Pokemon, for instance, games I play a lot. The story of Pokemon games is not, oh no, Team Rocket is trying to stop the thing and they're getting the legendary the story of Pokemon is, I'm on Route 237. Half of my team is knocked out. I have no potions. I have 14 trainers in front of me, and I am going to have to wing it and cheese the fuck out of the systems in this game in order to get to the fucking next Pokemon Center, because my ass is screwed right now. That kind of emergent narrative, that's what you remember from experiences like video games. And it doesn't come from a character being sat in front of you and like doing this, but like when you focus squarely on narrative, like I hate to say that this is where it was born for me, but like, are you at all familiar with the Drawn to Life games?
Yes.
You're, do you
Yes.
remember the Drawn to Life sequel?
No, I never played that
Okay,
one.
this shit, core memory for me
I
is
think
that
I know what you're talking about though. Oh my, is
I
that where they do go?
basically I ended up playing this Drawn to Life game because I was like, oh yeah, you get to draw the little character and then you get to platform with him, and that's cool. And then I started playing this game, and it was this very melancholic game that was like, oh, fun platforming stuff and little mechanics with the DS and stuff like that. And like you kept going on, and it's like, this game is very like, it reminded me of like the never ending story, a incredible, like the novel specifically, like a genius novel, one of my favorite books ever written, that ends up being about like the antagonistic force within that, the nothing, is just this all-consuming sort of force that swallows everything. Like it swallows time, it swallows space, and it just encroaches on the known universe and begins to eat away at the entire fictional realm that the story takes place within. That's kind of what's happening, and you have the antagonist of the game is actually pushing against this force. And the more you like learn about the game, the more you're just like, there's something like happening in this game's narrative that's strange. And then you find out the entire game at the very end of it is actually within like basically this entire thing is a microcosm for a conflict that is happening within someone who in the actual real world that you inhabit gets in a car accident and is in a coma after losing their family and is trying to rationalize what is happening through this video game story. And I just remember like finishing that game like 12 years old and being like, what the fuck do I do with that?
They had
I,
commercials for that shit on Cartoon Network, bro.
that shit traumatized the generation of children. And I remember being like, I don't really know how to think about video games like the same way anymore. And like I like one of my favorite, I mean like borderline my other favorite video game besides Fire Emblem Awakening, another entry in the critically acclaimed 2013 lineup of games, one that has aged
Yep.
better than the three games that I mentioned, not for nothing. But my other favorite game, Final Fantasy Tactics Advance, is literally an isekai story that is self-aware because you begin in the real world and you are sucked into a Final Fantasy game, but the story itself ends up being, oh, hey, your disabled brother can walk in this world and you are trying to send all of you and your friends back into the world in which all of the people that you know and care about hate the normal world that they're in and are like bullied and have dead loved ones they can't see anymore or are disabled, and you are this incredibly privileged like I have to return the world to normal, and everyone's like I don't want you to, and you end up accomplishing your goal and are like, oh, I'm the baddie. I'm the bad. Oh my god. Like that
Are we the
just
baddies?
yeah, literally like that destroyed the way I thought of video games. Like I finished that game's final boss in a Starbucks parking lot and then my life was different afterwards and I was just sitting there. My mom was just being like, "Hey, you okay?" And I was like looking out the window like I don't I don't know anymore. So like this has been a concept that's fascinated me for years, and frankly, it's never been more elegantly explored than it has been in Slay the Princess. So I'm glad that you got, well, I mean, basically you seem to have gotten everything that I wanted you to get out of this experience. And like seriously, even if you've listened to this whole discussion and haven't played Slay the Princess, the entire point of this game is that the experience you have with it will be meaningful. It's not about whether or not you know the spoilers or whether or not you know what's going to happen. You should still totally play this game.
Yes, absolutely. This is not a Undertale or a Doki Doki where the if you have the punchline ruined for you, you're
Yeah,
not gonna have you're not gonna
part of
have
the
the same
magic is
kind of
gone.
yeah, part of the magic is gone. No, play this fucking game, even though you've heard us talk about every detail of it, because there's still something there to find and unfurl and enjoy about yourself, like
The
by
moment to moment
engaging with
problem
something like
solving,
this.
the just like it's this game is the interactions with the princess, which is funny because it's the stuff that we have talked the least about, which means that you as a listener to this podcast, and now I'm breaking the fourth wall, haha, full circle, you as a listener can still interface with and get a lot out of because it's interesting, and just do this to hear the fucking voice performances in it because they really are quite layered and quite like really engaging. Like again, Nicole Goodnight has this versatility to her vocals that are just like she really does like can do anything, and like just fucking she made me feel a type of way in ways I never thought I would feel in video games. Made me very confused about some monster ladies that just look, if you're the type of person, if you played Baldur's Gate 3 and you saw the demon lady and you were like, I'm I'm gonna fuck that demon lady.
Patron Baldur's Gate 3 companion tier list coming soon. Uh,
Yeah, I'll call over Morgan and we can talk about why what
Lae'zel.
Lae'zel is secretly one of the best characters in the game.
Anywho, I want to slap a ranking on this thing.
Yeah.
I This is not usually my type of experience that I go for because the overtly like, oh, this game is gonna not be what you think it's gonna be. I always just kind of have like a
Ugh.
yeah, sure, whatever, like eye
Yeah.
roll reaction to that sort of thing.
That's why it took me so long. I completely get you.
But getting into this, I ended up really, really enjoying it and getting a lot out of it. So this is going to get a very strong 4 for me. I had so
Awesome.
much fun with Slay the Princess. I just wish I could go back and do it again for the first time, honestly.
Yeah. And I feel like that is like I feel like if the developers heard us say that, they would be like, "We accomplished our goal," because that's what you want to have. It's just like, I want to have that first initial experience again. It makes you want to find another game that'll also give you that kind of high of that initial first experience.
But that's the conflict, though, because chasing that sort of thing will inevitably ruin those kinds of surprises for you.
Mm-hmm.
So you
Definitely.
got to take these kinds of surprises where you can get them. And even though I kind of knew what I was getting into with this game still delighted me in a lot of ways that I didn't expect. So very much enjoyed.
Yeah. All right. Yippee. Yippee.
Now that we've slain the princess, you're on a walk in the woods. It's Frank's forest.
Jen, I have
So
I have one question.
yeah,
Why?
because this album charted at number 61 on the fucking yes, okay. So we're talking about the new album from Forrest Frank, Child of God 2, which
The
I would
squeakquel.
never I would never say that we need to talk about Forrest Frank's Child of God 2 if this album didn't chart at number 60 on the album chart, and if the lead single Your Way's Better did not chart significantly.
Feel free
Uh,
to correct me if I'm wrong
Scratch
here,
that, scratch
but
that. I'm gonna correct you. The album peaks at number 12 on the album charts. Your Way's Better peaks at 61 on the Billboard Hot 100 when that song comes out.
right.
So I discovered this guy because of Todd in the Shadows' episode on Alex Warren, because he had seen that this song was trending as well and put a clip of it in that episode and was just like, this is what's charting now? This? And I'm like, what? Who is this guy? Because I recognized this dude's voice when I heard that snippet of it that was in the video, because Forrest Frank used to be, possibly still is, I don't know, used to be in a band called Surfaces that had a couple like pandemic hits. Sunday Best was their like big hit.
Of
I don't
course it
know
was
if you know what
called
that is.
Sunday Best.
Well, yeah, I don't know what that is, but the thing with Forrest Frank is that Surfaces was kind of a secret Christian dance pop band.
There's a couple acts like that I feel that have retained at least a moderate amount of relevancy where it's like they're not like even lyrically you can't overtly tell that they're like a Christian band, but if you look between the lines a little bit, you're like, no, yeah, like it's definitely there, like a little bit.
Yeah, like a lot of love for these guys, but Need to Breathe is a good example of
Yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Those I have a lot of love for Need to Breathe, like unironically, I like a lot of their shit, but they were one of those guys that before their late 2010s album Hard Love, they were kind of flirting with the idea of being a Christian radio band, and they're still kind of like one foot in, one foot out. But that album cycle in particular in the late 2010s was like, oh no, we're going big for Christian radio because they had a cut with, was it Mandisa that did a song with them? Anyway, I'm getting too far off track. They did a song with somebody who's like big on Christian radio that got them a boost in that space. But Forrest Frank, once he decided to go solo, took his penchant for like pop rap and lo-fi and indie pop to an explicitly Christian place with his lyrics. And so when I realized that this album, Child of God 2, is a legitimate force on the charts, I kind of knew that we had to talk about it in some way, shape, or form. But the thing about Child of God 2 is that the things that make this album bad are the things that make a lot of normal albums bad. Like, it's really long, it's really redundant, it feels really stream gamey. Like, a lot of these songs just sound way too similar to each other.
Oh
Stuff that we've
God.
complained about in the past with, like, the Morgan Wallen album or some of the more recent Drake projects that just really overstuff themselves with really similar material that really would just improve the album if it was left on the cutting room floor, but there are people who are fishing for a hit. So, Jake, did you know anything about this guy? What was your experience of listening to this like? How are you feeling? Are you going to come to my house and kill me?
Forgive me if I'm wrong here. I might just be forgetting something. But in terms of like how familiar we were with something we've been recommended by the other person on this show, I think that me and this is the least familiar I've been with anything I've talked about on here. Like, I hadn't seen the Tron movies, but I knew Tron. I knew what that was about. I knew what to expect. This was something you just threw me right into the middle of the fire with this, and I was just like, I have no clue what this is. Like I at least everything you've recommended me beforehand, I'd at least heard of. Like
Right.
I'd had an idea of what to expect. So I was really like, when going into this, I was really like, I am going to be as fair as possible here. I have no bias other than the fact that this is called Child of God, so I can at least have some idea of where this is coming from. And Jen and I, we live in the same part of the same state in the Bible Belt. And so I'm going to go out on a limb and say that you probably grew up and were probably familiar with radio stations like K-Love, weren't you?
K-Love, baby. I was a K-Love
Ah,
baby.
uh-huh. And that's probably where you heard, I mean, like that this goes all the way back to one of my favorite things that has ever been put on this channel, our Toby Mac episode, where we talk about the acclaimed and best-selling album, Welcome to Diverse City, a staple of my musical childhood, the first hip hop I ever listened to as a wee lad, and an album I have heard 100 times because my mom and my best friend's mom had it on CD in their car. And even though I was not familiar with Forrest Frank or anything about any of this, within 2 songs, I was right at home. And by right at home, I mean like, the home in which you were like beaten as a child because Christian music, man, like the thing about Christian music is that as somebody who grew up with all of this stuff and was exposed to the wider corporate world of Christian music through bands like the Newsboys, through who aren't they canceled now?
The lead singer is canceled
Yeah,
for
yeah.
raping men. Allegedly,
Wow!
allegedly,
Wow!
allegedly.
Okay,
We're
allegedly.
gonna get a lot of
And
trouble for this episode.
sure, you know what? Good. But also artists like I've seen like are you familiar with Ichthus?
No.
Okay, so Ichthus
What
was
is an
a
ichthus?
Ichthus is the Latin word for the little fish symbol that is often used with the like New Testament and
Yeah.
like the teachings of Jesus and stuff like that. And it was the name of a music festival that happened in like the Midwest and the Bible Belt that basically had all of these like K-Love core artists attend.
Nah,
And
we had winter jam.
it it's the same, basically the same kind of thing. And like I have seen, like my mom has an autograph of Stephen Curtis Chapman, like for example. And yeah,
Oh, that takes me back. That
oh
name
yeah,
takes me back.
yeah. I remember songs like "Dive" were staples of my childhood, and like I felt right back at home when I listened to bits and pieces of this because this is the specific brand of Christian music that I call youth pastor core. Which
Yup.
is, this is the, it's contemporary enough to appeal to the youth, but it's mostly listened to by out of touch millennials who are, trying to give you a purity ring and push abstinence on you and, all that kind of stuff. And, I grew up, my mom was raised a Southern Baptist, and then I was immediately sent to Catholic school. So naturally, I was sent down the pipeline of either become a crazy right-wing nationalist or a queer person, and I picked the better route. And this type of music, like I can't stress enough for anyone who might potentially be offset by some of the things we're about to say, but about this world of art, and I say art with a terse tone on purpose, is that I find this stuff uniquely repellent because of the world it comes from and the like and how aggressively corporatized it is and how homogenous it feels and how insincere it all also feels additionally. Like it evokes all of the same feelings that just like there is plenty of Christian music and music made by Christians that I think is worthy of celebration. Again, one of my favorite things to come back to always is that somebody like Kendrick Lamar is an incredibly outspoken Christian and deals with faith on his records literally all the goddamn haha time.
And I also want to press there are people in this space who make good music.
Yes, like
Like,
like
who make stuff
actual
that like gets what they want to say about God across in a way that doesn't feel, insincere, patronizing, whatever. And they're also just like making music that is good to listen to, that we find compelling, that we
worthwhile.
find worthwhile. It can be safe, it can be, playing in safe genre circles, but that doesn't mean it's not good. There are
Yeah.
people who are good at making music in this space.
Absolutely. Like this goes back to also, when we talked about Skillet and when we talked about that sort of dual episode we did on Skillet's Awake and oh God, what was
The
the other
Switchfoot
album?
album.
Switchfoot. Switchfoot and you know what? Switchfoot example of a band that, like after a certain point they became pretty stagnant, but like a lot of Switchfoot stuff okay. I'm all right with a lot of what they're going for, and a lot of some of their hits are pretty worthwhile, and regardless of certain statements made by the band and how fucking pretentious the lead singer is, like I still say that there is a distinct designation in my mind between people who make Christian music and people who make music for a Christian audience. There is a very, very obvious difference between the two because one of them is just like it all sounds the same and it's designed to sound the same because it's comfortable, it's easy to digest, and if I can afford this album any one compliment, it's that I guess it commits to enough of its multiple genres within it to the point where I'm like, I can at least tell that Mr. Forrest Frank listens to music that isn't just this incestuously awful Christian shit where you basically are just taking influence from the same three bands over and over again and repackaging it for a modern audience every single time, even though the Jay Dilla shout out on this album made me
Oh my
want to tear
God.
the skin off of my face. It at least assures me that these people do, in fact, listen to real music. That said, oh my fuck. Did,
So let
um,
me let me be the one to guide the ship through this track list. So we start with Encore, which is an example of the worst musical idea ever, 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 which is the emotionally loaded phone call layered over boring instrumental. Every time anybody does this, and so many of these bands in this space do this, it's awful. It's the worst thing you've ever heard because it's just some fuck ass relative trying to say something profound that they maybe don't even know is going to end up on a album that could go platinum. And so they just say the dumbest shit imaginable when they start talking about TikTok dancing in this song.
it's like backed up by this faux inspirational crowd choir gospel shit, but the phone call itself is like like it's everything wrong with this scene in a nutshell because it's like like albums and artists like this will promote, follow the teachings of Jesus, which notably I would like to say include things like humility, even
There is a
though
song about humility on here.
there is a song about humility on this album, but even then, it's still kind of intrinsic to the because, like, listen, I know scripture, motherfucker. I had to stay at Catholic school when I didn't get permission slip signed and had to write it fucking down because they didn't know what to do with kids in Catholic school who didn't get permission slip signed. So I had to copy the Bible verbatim on several instances in my life. We had religion class. I have studied the New Testament. I know my shit. So when you come in here into this house of the Lord and you present this fucking choir and talk about how God has elected you to be his instrument. And this crowd of people's like, yeah, nothing says humility quite like a self-impressed Christian that really, really loves the fact that they can celebrate, that they can pander to their audience by saying the same 8 things that all of these bands will all say in their songs about how much they love Jesus, about how much they love his teachings, and about how, and I like, not to Kanye, I am going to let you finish, but the problem, like, I can't even say anything hugely meaningful about stuff like this, even though God knows I'll try. This was taken to task decades ago by, of all people, Trey Parker and Matt Stone. There's an episode of South Park which basically destroys the entire corporate Christian, like, conglomerate by being like, oh, Cartman becomes a Christian musician by pandering to Christians and a Christian audience by retrofitting his personality and just taking love songs and replacing baby, girl, and you with Jesus and all of the lyricism. And then that's how he rockets to success. That is literally the exact same problem this music has been suffering from for like 30 years now. Is that all these songs, all these lyrics are just love songs where you replace girl with Jesus. It's all exactly the same, and they're all like, and it's all like people who are wearing like these clean cut non-threatening white guys wearing a nice little cross necklace with nice gelled back hair and a little microphone thing speaker, and he appears completely.
You know, the things that all musicians wear when they're performing, a little
Yes,
microphone.
but it's always part of the image. It's always part of like exactly what you expect. They have a nice little like jet. They look like an old Navy model, basically.
Right, I
And
hear
this
you.
this this lyricism and stuff, and it's this self-congratulatory tone that, again, it's a lot of the problems that I had with the lyricism of Toby Mac's stuff, where it's just like, even if the music is occasionally kind of compelling on an album like Welcome to Diverse City, the fucking subject material is just so unbelievably repetitive and filled with a lack of songwriting detail.
The thing about the love song to Jesus shtick entirely holds true on this album's biggest hit, Your Way is Better, the second track here. Which is, I mean, it says everything you need to know about the lyrical content of this song is in the title. So what I just really want to talk about is how limp this song is. Limp lyrics,
This is a
limp
hit.
instrumental, limp key change. How do you have a limp key change?
It's a fucking AJR ass key change where it
Y'all dumb
happens.
motherfuckers want a key change.
Basically, I mean, ironically, a much better key change. But like this shit, like the basic A-B rhyme scheme in this, the rhyme of messy and jet ski in this. Oh God, flay me alive, dude. I like the
The
way
melodies on this
the
song are
the
some
way
of the
he
worst
holds the
I've
syllables
ever
in the melodies
heard.
drives me fucking crazy, man. It's
Bayader.
oh oh
Every
man.
every line in this chorus has this weird like middle part where he just has to overemphasize a syllable on something that he's saying. And so he
It
just sounds like he started writing a poem that didn't fit the meter and just turned it in anyway.
It's oh my God, man. It's so fucking obnoxious. It's so like it's songwriting that feels like it was done via Mad Libs and you had to like force structure into it with this kind of like vocalizations that he'll like occasionally put in. It's so labored. Like it's like the songwriting here, ironically, even though it's so flavorless, bland, and nondescript, it's somehow like it's underwritten, but overstructured. And even then, half of this song is the refrain being repeated over and over again. Oh my God.
Embarrassing
Kill
falsetto
me.
on the start of this song, which is not the first time I'm going to say that about this album. This dude,
Uh,
look. I know I have a 6 out of 10 singing voice. This dude has a 6 out of 10 singing voice and thinks he can do more with it than he can. He is punching above his weight class.
Oh, I mean, especially considering the multi-genre hopping that this album will indulge in. Like we lean a little harder into hip hop and stuff like Amen, which I will generously again describe as a youth pastor rap. It's like punctuating every fucking bar here with Amen is just like it is every song here feels like they were like, what can we do to make this song the most annoying version of itself? Like, if I am genuinely, if you took if you took out the Christian buzzwords like God, amen, praise, worship, if you take these or phrases like God is good all the time God is good,
That's a movie
if you
reference.
if you
Shout out to
take
God's Not Dead.
actually, before those came out, that was actually something that Catholic churches were really keen on saying all of the time. I remember having to say it literally hundreds of times growing up at fucking Catholic school. But like, if you eliminate these phrases and those buzzwords, I am convinced that this album and this song by proxy would be nothing but guttural symbolic vomiting. Like it's just the way this ends with fucking I don't want the glory, Father, you can have it, after the fucking self-congratulatory ass first track of the crowd being like, ah, it's just like, yeah, real good instilling the New Testament values of Jesus' teachings of humility.
Embarrassing white boy flows on
Im-
this song.
Man,
This song is made for the live performance call and response shit of like,
mm-hmm.
this is the one to get the crowd going because they're going to have to shout amen at the top of their lungs every 4 seconds.
It is like it always comes back to the buzzwords. It always comes back to the stock phrases and terms that just they lose all meaning so fast. It's like your in continued insistence on employing these devices just dilutes them so quickly. And it means that whenever you even slightly deviate from these things, it ends up sticking out like a sore thumb. Like when songs have actual lyrical ideas beyond pandery ass Christian raps, you get a song like Big, which is frankly Mac Miller, pseudo Mac Miller Christian rap, which fucking I hate it here, man. Aside from the acronyms in this song, which are just
Uh,
rancid,
it's black.
rancid.
It's black AOC, no matter what they try.
Like,
I was thinking
like
about that fucking JPEG Mafia song again and that
the
fucking Morgan Wallen TN song.
the fucking the fucking the refrain of the "ooh yeah, he's a big god." Like,
Is he?
okay,
I guess. I don't
I
know.
this is where it gets a little bit more into like my own personal problems with stuff like this, but I really do just loathe listening to Christian music like this that talks about how nice and carefree it is to be Christian. Because I mean, like, to be blunt, it's just a bunch of privileged white people bragging about how much they don't have to give a shit about real people problems. Mainly because of the cognitive dissonance of having to hear the entire modern Christian right constantly talk about how they're the most persecuted demographic of people on planet Earth. And I get that you can't hold the same exact people responsible, but if you want to pretend like there's no overlap here, you're engaging in an act of self-deception that I simply cannot interface with. But it's just I can't listen to this shit when I have to like look at my phone and turn on the news occasionally and, see that like elected officials are listening to people like Nick Fuentes. Like this has aged so poorly politically. And I know that that's a very like that's kind of a lazy way to look at art like this, but frankly, it feels so insidious right now. Like feels like you are trying to ensnare people. Like it feels like you are doing an unironic version of REM's Shiny Happy People. Like written with zero irony, with zero self-awareness, with like none of the artistic merit whatsoever. You are just shoving this to the forefront to ensnare as many people as possible so that you can just continue forward, and it makes my skin crawl.
So the thing about Forrest Frank that we should also discuss is that this man is embarrassingly online, and says very
Ugh.
embarrassing things, like on the song No L, where he talks about seeing W's in the chat for Jesus.
I I have to draw a line in the sand somewhere, and the line is being drawn at Christian trap. Like
Yeah,
the this
Christian.
is
There are multiple instances on this album of what I can only describe as white boy Jesus trap soul,
it is Jack Harlow but with a Jesus coat of paint.
including a
And
direct shout out to Bryson Tiller. So I know you've
yep.
listened to that album, you prick, and you're
Uh,
ripping him off. That's a
and
Louisville native you're ripping off right there.
I would like to point out that this is 6 songs into this album, and we have not had a song with different subject material besides Boy Howdy, It's Real Nice to Be Christian. We don't know, like, if you were somebody who is trying to learn about what Christianity is or what it does, and I'm not saying you have to deliver a fucking thesis on this kind of shit whenever you make art about it, but if you tried, perhaps, to learn about anything that these people believe or that they their doctrines or Jesus himself, you would walk away with an F minus understanding of what these concepts are or mean, because it is literally just, boy, I do like being Christian, I love Jesus, Jesus loves me, etc., etc. You can break this album down on a near atomic level. Every single lyric can in some way relate back to this core idea. And when I tell you, every every single one of these 20 songs, 19 songs, and one other thing that we'll get to later, every one of them is about the same thing. And like, I can't believe I'm saying this, but an album like Welcome to Diverse City does a much better job at least pretending to try and be about different things than this does. This is like, it is an album that is so unbelievably happy-go-lucky. It feels like it would be like the music that villains use in a children's movie to try and like hypnotize
Brainwash
people.
the children.
Yeah, it does feel that, and I know that it's not that insidious in its construction, but it nevertheless emanates this kind of odious vibe. Like, and hell, on the song before this, it feels like fucking Macklemore. Like, it's a song about like pondering like heaven, where one of the first things that he asks is if his 2-year-old child will look old, and I'm like, what? Like, and it's agonizingly fucking repetitive. Like, if this is where Frank is going to spend eternity in the context of this song, my agnostic ass is gladly walking straight down to hell. Because if this is the way that heaven is being painted, it sounds like a real fucking bummer for squares. Like, and then we get the same idea, the exact same idea on Paradise. It is the same song,
There's
lyrically
also
speaking.
two songs about I wish I could put my phone down and go outside, which is
Which, after
annoying.
after listening to that World is a Beautiful
Annoying.
Place album this week, is it was a particularly difficult pill to swallow. The one thing I didn't mention about No L's is that this album's production, overridingly, I would say about 70% of it is aggressively pleasant, nondescript instrumentals. The remaining 30%, on the other hand, is some of the most comically inept mixed percussion I have heard on any album I have listened to for this show in the 5 years of reviewing music. The bass drums on no L's. I thought that the stereo I listened to this music on in the truck I listened to it at work was going to break. It
It's
like
so
it
loud.
is deafeningly loud. I was like, "Oh my God, what the like I was shaking everything in my vehicle. I thought I was witnessing like I was like, "Am I on a fault line? What the fuck's going on here?" Like, oh man. And then like you get through fucking Paradise and like he like again, a lyrical conceit on here is that he wants a realm, he wants a world where things are easier, i.e., heaven, in an album where he constantly beats you over the head every fucking line about how wonderful and nice it is to be a Christian. Motherfucker, is there a dimension that exists conceivably where you could have an easier time than this one? Because it really, the music that you're giving to me is telling me otherwise. Like, I'm working with the material that you're giving me here, and you're like, man, I wish shit was easier. For fucking who, man? For who? The writing is so comically poor that, like, any time that there is a negative inclination spoken about on this album, it's a problem or a trouble that are vaguely alluded to, non-existent, and as far as I'm concerned, completely fucking like I don't know what this man's problems or struggles are. I don't know like what he grapples with beyond the vague concept of his faith and believing in God, which look, you can make a concept album about struggling with your faith. I've heard plenty of music that reckons with this idea that I personally relate to and love. Again, I'm an agnostic and not an atheist for a fucking reason. It's because I'm a dumb motherfucker in the cosmic sense of it all. I don't know what to believe, honestly. I have pretty strong pulls towards specific things, but at the end of the day, I believe that there is no such thing as absolutism. I think that being an absolute in any respect is probably a bad idea, and you should always keep an open mind about everything. But when you give me this, man, when you give me nothing, like, this is what people who do not worry about anything listen to. And I mean, I'm just kind of nauseated by it. Like, talk about a struggle, talk about an issue so that you are relatable. This isn't even like a Christian thing. This is a songwriting thing. This is a getting people interested in what you are. It's like, this is why people who don't listen to this music and don't have the experience that you and I have with listening to it, this is why it feels immediately rancid to them. It's why I made everyone on the podcast listen to albums like the Toby Mac album, because listening to it is an alien experience to most normal people that they get a weird system shock from that I find incredibly entertaining. But at this point in my life, I'm also just like, I like fucking woke up this morning. I'm begging for this album to be about anything other than how nice it is that Jesus is in your life.
Well,
Anything!
you're not gonna get it. You're just gonna get some embarrassing shout outs.
uh every album like this with the competently arranged instrumentals has to have at least one or two moments where the atmosphere moment on Welcome to Diverse City. Dancing in the Presence production on this song, it's nice, good beat, good vocal effect. Too bad the song is the same as the previous eight songs in every way, shape, and form.
What
And
he tries to do with his voice in the second verse of this song, that like stuttering falsetto that he does towards the end,
yeah, that's
is a
mhm.
crime. The
I
only crime worse is the fucking Kool and the Gang sample that happens at the very end of this song of Summer Madness.
like it's constantly alluding to other better music. It's like again when we get to the Jay Dilla shout out later on this album, it's just like so you have heard what normal music is like and yet you still chose to make this instead. Like it like don't get me wrong, it's not fun on Dancing in the Presence, but man, when we go to Nothing Else, I don't know how it's possible to gentrify John Legend, but man, this motherfucker found out a way to do it. This is now actually, you know what? That's actually too kind. This is John Legend for white people who cross the street when they see a black person. My only other note about this is that I kind of want to kick Thomas Rhett in the mouth.
How do you waste your big Thomas Rhett feature on a song that isn't even 2 minutes long, where he complains that he's spending too much time on his phone?
This I oh
This is the real reason why I recommended this album to you, Jake, is because I have crossed the Rubicon of bad Christian music. This one in particular is hilarious. This is a hilariously bad song to me.
Oh God, it's oh for sure. It's I mean it is comical on every level. It is comical in how it sounds, it's comical in how it's performed, it's comical in how it's written. It is if I wasn't suffering through a straight 60 minutes of this, I would probably have the energy to laugh at it, but at this point in the track list, I'm just like okay, we're half over. All right, I can soldier on. I can march on, Christian soldier.
Well, we're gonna march outside,
A
because
song
the next
about
song
how
is
much Frank
outside.
loves being outside and Jello. Naturally, who do you think is responsible for all of these simple pleasures? But of course, it is Jesus Christo himself. There's a neat little funk riff towards the end of this
Yeah,
song. I
this song
like
is
that.
fine. This song is fine.
It's it all it made me do is think, God, man, you know what album has a the good universe version of this album was made by this little guy named McKinley Dixon, and he's got a song that's about this exact same thing with a similar title, and I was like,
We
God,
outside,
I
rejoice,
would
rejoice.
we
Mm.
outside rejoice, rejoice. Like literally the embodiment of all of the ways in which music like this can succeed. Like that is still my album of the year. It is, you know, barely it is like half this album's length. It is 9,000 times more potent as a statement, engages in interesting storytelling, but also does grapple with themes like religion and God and death and the afterlife in ways that are genuinely fascinating that I have not heard interacted with before. And
And then you
man,
have the worst Jesus hype song you've ever heard with Celebration.
put your
Limp vocals, limp lyrics, limp forest. Your
put
trees will not hold up my home.
put your phone down and raise your attitude. What if I smacked you in your pasty melanin deficient little face? How about that? Like, what do you think, say, that this celebration is for or about? What do you think it is? Jesus. And
God.
And like I love that he sets a condition in the second half of this song that's just like if you believe that Jesus set you free, naturally, if you don't, I'm guessing that people can go fuck themselves, which
You
is
were
just
not invited to the cookout.
no, absolutely not. In fact, the song before that, Live Your Life, has a fucking lyric where literally it's just today I'm not worried about nothing. And this like this song starts with this line. It begins as I desperately search for a meat grinder to shove my fucking head in. Like just live your life, he says. The gray sky shouldn't bring you down, he says. What must it be like to live in this different reality that these people must occupy, I wonder? This acoustic white boy shit is taking a toll on my mental health. Like, this, like, on some level, this guy is multi talented, but like it's like that the lack of standards for this music has just let this guy be just talented enough to get his foot in the door and then artistically grow 0 centimeters beyond that. Literally not at all.
Well, don't worry. We're
Happy.
about to get a break from the acoustic white boy shit. What do you want to talk about, Happy?
I'm so happy I'm alive today is the first lyric. I can't make this up. This is bordering on sounding like Cope. This feels like a song that is
I'm not
delusional.
depressed.
It
I'm not
feels it's
depressed.
just like, and that is one thing that like I feel like that all of this, like the insistence of all of this stuff, the subject material, the beating this into a pulp is something that I talked about on the Toby Mac episode. And it's, to me, there is like an element of genuine cope that I feel like is within music like this, because it's like I feel like these people, and I can't prove this, but just in the way that these songs behave, in the way that this art is constructed, it feels like, if you read between the lines, there is like 1% of these people, like within them, there is 1% part of them that is actually unsure of their faith, that legitimately doubts their belief in God, in Christ. And a lot of them have they'll say like, oh, there was a point in my life where I didn't. And it's just like, and I feel like the continued, like, oh, I love Jesus so much. Jesus, 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 Jesus. I feel like this music is made for people who have that little sliver of doubt inside them, who need a balm to shove it down, because no, 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 no. It can't possibly be that this is not everything that it was promised to be. It can't be that I'm wrong. It can't be that my parents were wrong. It can't be that this entire religious institution was wrong. It's not possible. So they have to listen to music like this in order to push that further and further down, to convince themselves that no, 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 they're on the right path. They don't have to think critically about this. I know I'm sounding like I'm like, oh, all the sheeple need to wake up, 1984 Orwell, but like, honest to God, can you really blame me at this point? Can you?
I think I could produce better music if I shook Forrest Frank and gave him a agnostic episode.
I
Better music would
I
come
would
out of it.
are you like I would be fascinated to listen to an album about a like overwhelmingly Christian person reckon with like encroaching agnosticism. That is actually quite fascinating. Like,
No one's ever gonna do it,
funnily
but
enough, Jen, this is a very interesting way I can tie this back into something, is that listening to this was such a like a plastic experience. Like, listening to this was such a like edgeless, like just so, easy pill to swallow, don't think, fucking like head empty experience to me. I immediately had to reach to listen to a death metal album afterwards. Like, I had to listen to something with ideas and grit and passion and just like legit, like I had to go there. And an album I've been listening to, like over the course of the past year, is an album from a band which is literally just one guy, who goes by the name of Meth Witch, who makes mathcore that I don't think you. I'm guessing you probably have never listened to mathcore before.
I've no, I
Yeah,
don't think
yeah, and
I
and trust me,
I've heard of
we'll
this
get
boy
there.
Meth Witch,
Meth
but
Methwich is kind of like he got like a big pull online because he had a pandemic album. The album I'm talking about is called Indwell. And it's this really fascinating album that draws from several different areas of extreme music. It's the only album you'll ever hear where one song will sound like Nine Inch Nails, the next will sound like the Dillinger Escape Plan, and then the song after that will sound like Linkin Park. Like, dude actually does a basically flawless impersonation of Chester Bennington on there. But this album is actually a concept album. The guy behind this record is a queer man who grew up in I believe, a Texan, who grew up in a very heavily Christian environment, who had to suppress his sexuality. And the entire album is basically written from the first person perspective of a man who is being possessed by a demon. And he is literally trying to kill himself so that he is not taken over and possessed by this demon. It is like if the Father Karras segment from The Exorcist was a mathcore extreme metal album, and it's fucking based and awesome, and I love it. It's one of the best metal releases of the decade, and more people should definitely hear it. But like that's an album that does actively grapple with the existence of God and the self-hatred of like an encroaching ideology shift, and like it's a fascinating work of art. And it speaks to the potential of music that talks about faith like this. And this is just like, and I'm not saying you have to be that level of challenging, but what you do have to do is just probe a topic. You got to talk about something. Instead, a song like Happy Man, I'm getting lyrics like, I used to be sour, now I'm sweet. Cinnabon, I'm gonna eat steel. What?
Well, don't we get a break from the white boy acoustic stuff because we have the hardest of the hard, the bangerest of bangers, the song that is all about taking it to the top. We have Drop. This song is about humility and to show us how humble Forrest Frank is. He's going to show us how he can take it to the top to see how hard he can make it.
And you know, you as a listener, who I'm sure has probably not heard this, might be thinking, oh, when Jen says this is a song about humility, it's not like Forrest Frank and company just say this is a song about humility. Oh, dear listener, but they do. They
But it
do.
is.
Just because, I'm so glad that when I listen to Mother I Sober by Kendrick Lamar, I'm so glad that the end of the song, Kendrick stops to tell me this song is about intergenerational black trauma and sexual abuse hidden within my community. Because, otherwise I wouldn't have known. So it was really good that he imparted that wisdom to me. Not only is this like one of the cringiest songs lyrically on this album, this is, oh man, the bass on this, like, this sounds like someone did the bass boost meme to a bad Travis Scott song, and that's just the beat. This sounds awful. Who mixed this shit? Like, this is the worst mixed hip hop song I have heard in all 5 years I have reviewed music on the internet. This is
Woo!
staggering. Like,
Doggy.
it's almost deafening. Like, I had to take out my fucking headphones and be like, when I first listened to it, because I was like, oh man, like if you have your headphones up high, even remotely, it's like, oh God, it hurts. It hurts to listen to this song. It is painful. This song, man, the beat switch here is
The beat
accompanied.
switch is
He
awful.
he sounds like Hobo Johnson when he does the flow switch up. He sounds exactly like Hobo Johnson, and it is infuriating. And this is where you get the J Dilla drop at the end of this. Get that man's name out of your mouth.
Not only
He
is my life
was a
so good
producer.
because
Damn
not
it.
not only is my life so good because I have Jesus, my life is so good because I have fresh J's.
I like
And I can listen to Jay Dilla whenever I want.
walk into the ocean, please.
Walk
I
back into the forest, Frank.
and the next song afterwards, not better. Like Water is what it's called. And pray tell, like, what a lyric you would expect to be on here. Holy Spirit, pour your fire out like water. Is
What?
that the worst analogy I've ever heard? Maybe.
Maybe the worst use of
Maybe.
figurative language I've ever heard.
Like using the like I can see the thought process in my head of just being like, oh, we got fire, water, the two elements. It's like poetry. It rhymes. Except what? This is, I mean, like, honestly, your understanding of the English language and how it relates to the art of songcraft is like, I mean, Jesus, I'm not even a songwriter. I'm just a normal fucking writer, and I feel offended at the lack of creativity of just how fucking boring these devices are implemented. This is like this album consistently has some of the worst opening lines to songs that I think I've ever heard on any album. And also, this song is so fucking boring. Oh my God. Like,
Yeah,
yeah,
this song
sure.
sounds
It's
dull. Dull, limp, limp, dull.
honk, shoe, me.
POV. You know what's better than sex? Going to Sunday service, baby.
This is a song about wanting to fuck Jesus, and you can't convince me otherwise. Forrest Frank himself could debate me, and I would never walk away convinced of anything other than, oh, no, he wants to fuck Jesus. This is the longest 3 minutes of all time, actually. Did you
At,
know? I
at least
measured.
the at least the AC works in the church where you're at. I'm very happy for you, Forrest.
Not something that all of us are lucky enough to experience. In fact, having air conditioning at all in your church, not a privilege I was afforded. Instead, we all had to sign a permission slip to be in the buildings and churches that we were in school because all of it had asbestos in it, and we had to sign a waiver that we wouldn't sue the school if we contracted a terrible, horrible, debilitating illness. So, if I die anytime in the near future, I know you might think I killed myself because of this album, but it was actually probably the Jesus asbestos. Or or
That's gonna be the name of my next punk band, the Jesus
Jesus asbestos.
Asbestos.
That unironically hard. That's more creative too than anything on this album. And man, when I was listening to this album, we're about to talk about the 18th song on here. And man, at this point I was like, I am begging on my knees like the apostle Paul himself before he changed his name and his revelation caused him to be a follower of Christ. I begged, please, to the God I don't actually believe in, but would be like, oh, okay, if I was presented with proof that he existed, please, dear Lord, give me a change of tempo. Give me anything other than what I have been given 17 times in a row on this album. And then the monkey's paw finger curls tightly.
So this is a song about when you're a kid and you get taken to your local stadium for a Jesus concert. This is the song that they play after the guy who's leading the program talks for 5 minutes about the exact mechanism by which you can accept Jesus in your heart and invite you to come forward to the stage and let Jesus come into your heart. This is the song. It's just like a chemical dilution of that exact moment in time.
Jen, your vivid description of this very specific phenomenon feels like it calcified our friendship further. I've never felt more seen in my life than I do right now. I literally could not have phrased that any better than you just did. I like it's the sad piano chords that
Yup.
that signify the serious tone shift, and it is very literally just Jesus is nice when you're sad, and various elaborations on this exact same idea. I think the only note I took for this song is that I hope this guy gets Samson and Delilah'd.
Yeah, Jesus sees you when you're sad. He sees you when you're sleeping. He knows when you're awake.
He knows if you've
He
been
knows
bad
when
or
you've been bad
good.
or good.
So be
So be good
good
for goodness
for
sake.
goodness sakes. And you know what? Like, look, this is my bedside table. I've This is my bedside table. Check this out, motherfuckers. Look at this. God
Oh my
thinks
God, Max Lucado.
God
Not
thinks you're wonderful.
not Max Lucado. Oh my
I'm
God.
I'm gonna be incredibly fucking vulnerable here for a moment. When growing up in the Catholic Church, I spent many, many, many self-hatred fueled, very, very long, dark nights of the soul wondering, pondering existence, God, and all of these things. And I continuously had to read a book like this that is basically nothing but Christian cope aphorisms to try and make myself feel better because of how fucking cognitively dissonant I felt about the way that I was being brought up in the church. Like, I thank the God I only don't really not kind of sort of maybe believe in every day that my mom quietly also became agnostic over the years, because if I had to tolerate this shit in any sincere form after I went through this period in my life, oh man, I would be such a damaged human being. This shit just made me think of all of the most toxic and worst elements of music and this scene and this stuff that just it insulates you around this cushion that's just built around, don't think, don't empathize with other people, just, stay in your little corridor of what you believe in and never ever fucking, don't think critically about anything because Jesus doesn't want you to, and all this stuff. And like, man,
Don't overthink it. You just gotta believe.
don't
Don't
overthink.
overthink it.
And as if funnily enough, this album does get a fundamental tenet of this whole credo wrong, and that you just talked about how this is the song that comes after they do the 5 minute long speech, and instead this song presages the 8 minute long speech of testimony, which is not a song. It is the 8 minute runtime, stares you down once you get to it, like you are looking at angel eyes in The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, and you are waiting to be capped by a revolver. And man, it's a sermon. Oh my God, it's a sermon. He is so vague about the sin that he struggles with when he
Oh
talks
my
about
God,
his
it's so
journey.
annoying.
It's like,
He's like, I went to college and then I got involved in sin because I decided to think for myself. It's like,
look,
what do you mean?
look,
But what do you
maybe,
mean? He doesn't even say the think for myself part, but
and
what did
maybe
I write down? I just wrote down in quotes, man, I can't believe I tried to expand my horizons.
I I thought to myself, I was just like, maybe it's me projecting a little bit, but the intentional vagueness of referring to the sin just makes me think like, did you like kiss a guy or something? Like, I was just like,
What's
is
the Todd in the
this
Shadows bit? He might reveal his addiction to gay heroin tomorrow.
yeah, I mean, it's just like because I feel like they've gotten to the point where revealing that you struggle with drugs is something that is socially acceptable. If you like within these spaces, you can just be like, I sought drugs and all of this stuff. But like, being gay in any context, this is something they can't say that quiet part loud quite yet. And if they do, they're not quite in this area. But I mean, like, he is so vague about it that it's like I have to project because I just don't know what he's talking about. Like, did he buy Pokemon cards when his mom told him not to? And then he was just like, they're the tool of the devil. Like he finds Jesus. Yay, good for him. This sucks.
It sucks. I did not sign up to listen to a live album, especially not one like this.
And just the tone of it is so like I remember being like, this is what the preacher talks about after the homily, after you sing the hymn, and everybody sounds comatose because nobody can actually sing, and everybody who actually is singing these hymnals is fucking 12, and they're all tone deaf. And oh my God, I do not miss singing hymns in church. Oh my God. Sit, stand, kneel. Sit, stand, kneel. You fucking. The Catholic Church is borderline aerobics, man. You just do the sit, stand, kneel. Sit, stand, kneel. It's just. Oh God. It brought me back to just the darkest fucking period. Just the worst fucking place. Like. Not to be that guy. I remember when there was a particularly homophobic classmate of mine, and this was long before I had my own personal revelation about my own identity and sexuality. I remember him just shit talking gay people one day, and man, I there was a day where I got so pissed. I was just like, have you ever contemplated shutting the fuck up about this stuff in your life? There's not even a gay person in this classroom, and you never shut up about this kind of stuff. And every boy in class got called into the principal's office, and we had our youth pastor, who I don't know how they had like a non-denominational youth pastor in a Catholic church. I'm not sure how that worked. We actually also had a Jewish science teacher. Maybe we were just too poor to
Job's a
afford anything
job.
else. Yeah, a job is a job. He did teach us about evolution, but which was a fucking miracle. But actually probably the coolest
Just like
teacher
the
we had.
miracle of evolution. Am I right, kids?
Just like the God instituted miracle of evolution. But we had a youth pastor
God
come in,
made you to
and
evolve,
and
become your true form.
dude was literally like, he had to come and try and be like, he had to be like, Jesus doesn't teach us to be cruel to each other, which is why we shouldn't say homophobic things, but it's also why we shouldn't tell people to shut up when they're expressing themselves. And it was at that exact precise moment where I was just like, oh, this is all bullshit. Cool. Now I know. Okay, thanks. And then I moved on with my life after that moment. And man, if this doesn't bring me right back to sitting down in that room and being very nicely told that actually speaking up on behalf of the oppressed is just as bad as the oppressor if you really think about it. And it's like, truly and honestly, blow it out your ass.
Anyway, this was an album review we were just doing.
Yep.
No, I love that. I genuinely do think that's a great anecdote and a great way to just describe so much of what frustrates us about this cultural environment that we occasionally like revisit for the sake of this show and for the sake of honestly just morbid curiosity more than anything is what led me to this album. After hearing that it was charting, I was just like, well, I have to know
I'm
what
I
because
can see why.
K-Love music doesn't chart. Like as popular
No.
as it is in those circles, that stuff doesn't chart because that's just those people don't listen to music when they're not listening to the radio.
It
So they're
is
not boosting that stuff.
it
What
is
happens
like
when a guy who
Nashville.
comes, yeah, what happens when a guy who comes from the social media age making this kind of music gets an audience that connects with it that way. And so the streaming numbers, right, bump this up the charts. That's what happens to this that doesn't happen to acts like Toby Mac or bands like Mercy Me who are big in the space because those
Yeah.
people that listen to that kind of music don't engage with music that way,
It's
right?
it's a segregated industry. It is
They might
literally a
buy the
different.
CD. They
Yeah.
might buy the CD, but that only counts for so much. But a stream, that's you can right if you listen to the same song over and over again, that's basically like stacking the deck for, that song being on the chart. That's what Justin Bieber did back in 2020.
Yep.
Um,
Yep. It is
so people
literally a
who
different arm of the industry that has its own demographic because the people who listen to this music and stuff, they don't listen to music that isn't like this.
these
Like
people
that
don't have
is
Spotify accounts. They buy CDs and they put it on the
yeah.
radio station in their car.
And
Like
it's like, yeah, I buy vinyl, but I buy vinyl of like trans musicians who make shit on Bandcamp. I don't buy vinyl of fucking Toby Mac. And even then, like Toby Mac like got nominated for Grammys back in his heyday. I really doubt we're going to see anything like this get to that level of like genuine industry pull. Like
Alex Warren might get a Grammy nomination though.
we will have to reckon with that when it happens, I suppose.
When it happens because I'm telling you
You're probably right.
that song is big.
I am
If you haven't
intentionally
already
distancing
clocked.
myself from this area, so I will take your word for it, but I don't doubt you at all.
I don't like stalk the charts or anything, but when a number
No.
one song is by some former hype house guy who makes a
Mm-hmm.
Jesus song about how much he loves his wife, I'm like, something is going wrong,
Oh
and
yeah.
I need to figure out what it is.
It's like whenever like when somebody like Tom McDonald makes music and they're just like it's the number one album on iTunes and it's just like yeah because like a demographic of 90 people use iTunes and buy music digitally on
And
iTunes.
all that shit also updates live. Billboard doesn't update live. If
Yeah,
yeah, if you're the number one album in terms of like depth of purchases for an hour, you take a screenshot of that and then your PR team is set for like a month. But the Billboard
music
only
for
updates
people who
weekly.
listen to Ben Shapiro.
Let's look at the stats. I've got the
I
facts.
I just I just want to say
My money like Lizzo, my pockets are fat.
my money long.
Homie, I'm epic. Don't be a wab.
Th-
I
I
remember all these fucking lyrics of Ben Shapiro's rap verse because my brain is broken.
I had to do a lot of sitting and thinking with this album when I listened to it for the last time yesterday. And I was like, a thought popped into my head, and I was like, hmm, yeah, this is the worst thing you've recommended me for this show.
Is it worse than Morgan Wallen, actually?
And the thing is that was what I had to think about, and I was just like,
I knew it would be.
and it's like, yeah, the Morgan Wallen album is a lot longer, but like you at least get like you can reverse engineer the Morgan Wallen album into a character portrait of the man who made it. Like it's not
We
as
attempted to
though
do that ourselves. We
yeah,
went on this whole
like
exercise. We were like, how can we cut this album down to make it an actually compelling, like 40-minute album about a guy crashing out?
and the songwriting even when it's like bland and nondescript is that you can still like you can kind of again, you can reverse engineer it so that it says something about the man who made it. And the thing is with this, you can't do that. Like if it, were suddenly revealed tomorrow that this was an album that was entirely designed by a boardroom committee, it would be the least surprising news I'd ever heard in my life. It's just like, oh, gee, it's like the next thing you're telling me is that a politician will be outed as a pedophile. I'm so shocked by this. Like,
We're gonna
fucking of
get in
course.
trouble.
Good.
Jake, stop. We're gonna get in trouble.
Good. Look, if
Jake,
you
stop.
have the right enemies, you're doing something right.
True.
Also, simply should not be a controversial statement in the year of our Lord, but
No, definitely not. I'm just scared.
no, no, absolutely, absolutely. I
I
just,
saw I saw a post earlier today that was like, "Don't say anything that will get you on Fox News tonight."
don't. Basically,
Yeah, I was like,
it's
you know what? I need to live by that because I
it's
know there are
true.
people that don't care about that smoke, but I don't want that smoke.
No, but the thing is that like the thing about that is that when when it happens, and you know what I'm talking about. When it happens, everybody's gonna go on Instagram and they're gonna post good, and that's it.
And then it will be over.
And then it'll be over.
Is there anything we have to say about the last song on this album?
This is, I mean, honestly, this is just testimony in song form. It's nice.
Yeah,
It's okay musically, but the hi-hat is too high in the mix. So fuck
that's the
it.
thing is that there's a lot of passable songs on this that if you just cut the
In
fat,
theory, yeah.
if you cut the fat, I wouldn't have recommended this because it's like, oh yeah, it's a 30-minute Christian album and it
This
sucks. Like
this
water's
could
wet.
be this could be a palatable EP of 5 songs that would still suck and that I wouldn't like, but it would be like that's what this should be. That's the optimal form. Instead, it is an EP stretched to an hour. And motherfucker, I have listened to EPs that have spanned an hour. Sufjan Stevens has an EP that's an hour long. It's one of my favorite
Ethel
EPs.
Cain,
Ethel
perverts.
Cain,
Shout out to
Perverts,
perverts.
EP, great EP. Kendrick Lamar, debut project, self-titled. That's an hour long EP. that's pretty good. I am not against the idea of an hour-long EP, but man, you gotta do something with it. Like, we're talking about Slay the Princess and how that's such a medium-specific work of art. This this is music that doesn't feel medium specific, which is like a unique form of bad that I rarely come across. This is
Yeah.
the most empty album I have listened to since the Smashing Pumpkins dropped Sear.
Oof. Oh God.
And frankly,
I know what that means for you.
that's that. And honestly,
That's a lot.
listen, Billy Corgan's inane word salad ramblings, they're not better than this, but they are more entertaining. And that sentence that I just that felt vile to say. That
The fact that
felt
you had to
disgusting.
positively, that you just positively compared Sear to anything
The world
tells
is
me the
a
state that
vampire.
it tells me the state that you're in if you're speaking positively in any regard about Sear,
Yeah,
even
this.
comparatively.
Yeah, needless to say, 1 star. May God have mercy on your soul because I have none left to spare.
So does that mean 5 points? Does one
Five.
star? Does one
Yeah,
star
yeah.
mean five
Yeah.
points?
One star on the good rating, 5 on the bad. You get full marks for this. Fuck this shit. I
Hooray! Let's get the scores on the screen. I have 10. You have 6. Okay. So, Jake, how are you going to get back at me for this?
See, that's the thing. I've added a few things to my roster here this week
It
because
seems
of
like
this
we've
album.
struggled with the bad in a way that I think is interesting because, I mean, this pick for me was bar none, just like something that I went looking for on my own time. And then when searching for something to recommend you, was like, oh, yeah, I listened to that shitty Jesus album. I'll just throw that. And it's turned into a surprisingly good segment.
And a lot of it too is because I think we want to balance this show with things we're both passionate about on one side of the polarity of the other, but also something that is genuinely interesting to talk about because there's so many things that we could throw at each other that would earn us full marks that just like wouldn't they would just be like, yeah, this is bad, and then
Yeah,
we would
it
move on.
sucks. It obviously sucks, but it doesn't represent anything we can
And
make like very interesting statements
and
about.
and some of it with stuff like, Cry Wolf is stuff that, like, on a level, it's like, yeah, I enjoyed that. It's just like I took a fucking edible and had a great fucking time watching that with my fiance. It's like it was not agonizing to experience that. And frankly, I have a lot of things that are really just more interestingly bad to talk about in theory than they are to experience in practice. And this week I decided that I need to. I have heard enough talk of being merciful. I have listened to the Jesus folk talk too much about mercy. Mercy me, mercy you. Fuck you. So I needed to pull out the big guns. I needed to go for stuff that would get us there. Where that is, I'm not sure. Hell, I even contemplated throwing Sear at you for a little while, but I was like, but what would that truly
What
accomplish?
new do you have
Yeah,
to say about
what
Seer,
what
though?
could I possibly get out of somebody that would give us something new from an album like Sear that Morgan did not already give us with that segment? The answer is not a goddamn thing. Not a
I
goddamn thing
would
at all.
pale. I would pale in the face of
Yeah,
your all's
I
episode
I
on
would feel
Seer. I
bad
couldn't
love
carry that weight on
I
myself.
would feel bad giving you that task. That would be difficult to live up to. But at the same time, I also there's so many things that would be genuinely like kind of mildly pleasurable to experience and how bad they were. But no, I needed I needed to inflict pain. I needed to even the playing field
Oh
because
no.
I just want to remind you that you shot first. I had to decide between a couple of things this week. And when I tell you that this is the bottom of the fucking barrel of things I have experienced in my life, I do truly mean that I have put some things on this list that I have Even the mere thought of like experiencing them again makes me a little queasy, frankly. But then I had to decide which one. And then I
Oh,
also had to decide what is the merit of talking about such a thing? Because obviously I could just recommend you something so awful for shock value, and that could be an element, but there has to be something you can uncover about that. So Jen, what do you know about mid 2000s anime?
a decent amount, I
We've
would
talked about it.
say.
We've
I'm
talked
not
about a lot of it, you
I'm
know?
nowhere near as well read as you are, but I was around the internet when people were still talking about a lot of things from that era.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I may have no idea what you're about to throw at me regardless. There's no guarantee.
Well, the thing is that when we talked about something like Bleach, for example, when we went over our retrospective of that show, I mentioned that like the way I got into anime was that back in the old Wild West days of this very platform on YouTube, there were like anime was just here. Anime was just on YouTube and you could just watch it for free. Sometimes it would be flipped, sometimes they would do an editing trick to make it avoid the copyright bots because they weren't as stringent as they are today. But you could basically find anything and everything at some point on here. The world was your oyster. So that led to just sort of an influx of like you could find anything and you got some wild shit recommended to you. And when you're in this exploratory phase of your life, like when you're 12 years old, 13 years old, and you're exploring media and you're watching shit like Bleach, and I'm watching, you know, some of the most violent shit I've ever seen happen in anything up until that point that's not, American crime television. You can find things that will change your perspective, that will show you things you never thought you could see before. So Jen, I'm taking a trip down memory lane, and I'm talking about something that I know a lot of people my age and our demographic have a core memory of because it exemplifies a really specific kind of trash, a really specific kind of anime that when consumed at a young age, its veneer of maturity, of violence, of sexual, of edgy content can be, it's alluring because you haven't experienced anything like it, but also you take it dead seriously because you don't have standards for this kind of thing. You don't know much about this, but has had a weird ripple effect of a lot of people knowing what this is. It's had a surprising cultural impact. A cultural impact that has ballooned into inspiring things as enormous as Stranger Things. The Duffer Brothers, fun fact, have cited this exact anime I am about to recommend you as a main inspiration for a subplot
Please,
in their show.
please let this be what I think it is.
Jen, I am recommending you Elfin
Elfin
Lead.
lead.
I want you
Let's fucking go.
right now, get on your phone, get on Letterboxd,
Okay.
type this in, and check the most popular reviews.
Okay. We all had that. Okay, so top one. Wait,
Not the top
wait,
one. Yeah, 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 yeah,
wait.
yeah, 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 yeah. Go on, go
It's
on.
you guys.
Yeah, it's me, August, and Morgan right next to each other.
There's a new top and there's a fourth that's in between you and
Okay,
August, but yeah, you guys are the second, third, and fifth
now
reviews of Elfin
we
Lied.
we all watched this together years ago. I want you to read Morgan's review for this for people who have not experienced Elfenlied and do not know what they are about to get into.
I'm gonna try to do an impression of Morgan. Are you ready?
Okay.
Fun fact, if you actually watch this show in its entirety, you have to put your name on the sex offender registry.
When I tell you that I recommend this show to you, it brings me no joy, but at the same time, there is a lot of material to talk about with this little show here. And it's also not really that long either. I believe it's 13 episodes.
What's
Buckle
funny
in,
is that
pal.
as soon as you gave me this whole prelude, I clocked it. I was like, is it going to be Elfenlied? This motherfucker. Because
See,
we were talking
and
about like, what do you know about it? And I'm like, oh yeah, I definitely have some things that I remember. And Elfenlied popped into my
I
head
had
immediately. And
I
so
had
I
a
was like,
short
this
list.
motherfucker.
I had a short list of red buttons to push for this show where I was like, yeah, some of this is the like, and trust me, the worst is still yet to come. And I do mean that. The worst is yet to come. If you have heard of my ultimate red button, I would be genuinely surprised, but I'm still not even sure I'm going to pull that trigger. That said, who Nelly, this is going to be a ride. So, as I recommend you the worst of the worst. And actually, there is a video essay about Elfenlied that I am going to send you. That
I've
is a
seen it,
okay.
motherfucker.
Okay,
I
never
know
mind
what
then.
you're talking
Never mind.
about.
Okay,
I've
okay.
seen it.
That's a
It's
really good
great.
video essay that everyone should watch.
It's wonderful. I've
I'm
never
sure
seen the show, but
we
I
will
saw
mention
that.
it when we talk about it.
I saw it in my feed when I was taking like a long car drive, and so I was just like, "Fuck it, I got like a
And
5 hour drive. I'm gonna put this on," and it's the
and
best thing I've ever seen.
August himself has a video essay about this show that is very funny. I will absolutely link that when we talk about it because, worth it to see him eviscerate it.
But yeah, that title might have changed, but the video was called initially "Why Did We Like
Yeah,
Elfenlied" or something
hmm
like that. Yeah,
I think it might have been changed too, but that was what I remember it being. But yeah, so on the opposite side of things, what journey am I gonna be taking? Because man, again, I really like I was filing through the recesses of my brain this week trying to find what I was going like this is the most effort I have put into trying to figure out something for this. Like I contemplated like trying to find what the worst Warhammer 40K book was and thought about that. But I was like, man, recommending a bad book is like a uniquely terrible experience that I'm not sure I want to pull the trigger on.
So what I have for you is something that, in a very similar manner to Slay the Princess, is a piece that plays with the tropes of its respective genre and art form to create a story that I would describe as extremely effectively narrow. It is a story that is all about this one thing that is supposed to happen, but all the work that it takes to get there and how complicated this gets. And this work kind of plays its full hand immediately as a way to invite the audience into its narrative conceit so that as it goes along it can continue to challenge whether or not you're going to get the satisfaction out of the key premise. It's also relatively short considering its medium of choice, and so I think you're going to like it a lot. Jake, you're going to watch the AMC drama Kevin Can Fuck Himself,
I have never even heard of this.
which stars Annie Murphy from Schitt's Creek as a woman who decides that she is going to kill her shitty husband.
Wait a minute. Okay, I remember
I've
hearing
mentioned this to you before in passing.
I was gonna say I remember there's a latent memory in my brain of hearing somebody talk about this and me being like, wow, what an odd title.
I think Renee explained the premise to you the one
It
time when we were over at your place because we were in the midst of watching it at the time.
it may have been now it says that it is 2 seasons.
It is, but that's only 16 episodes.
Okay, okay. That's not bad. Interesting. So,
Don't look too much into it because the
oh,
episode to
I don't
episode
like
to
to.
episode is where the real meat is, and some of those like episode descriptions just kind of give the game away.
And a little, I guess, a little outside baseball here for a moment. Is this on streaming
It's on
anywhere?
Netflix
Oh,
still.
perfect, perfect, perfect. I'm already watching something on there that I am enjoying, so I can double up on things that I like watching then. This is also like I love that this is like a critically acclaimed show, but it's not that critically acclaimed to the point where it like could conceivably be considered underrated, which is like always my sweet spot for stuff that
It's
I'm
kind
like,
of yeah, it's kind of in the Mr. Robot zone of like a
yeah,
bunch of people, everybody who watches it really, really likes it, but
Hmm.
not a lot of people actually watched
One of these days we're
it.
gonna do a Jen and Jake talk on Mr. Robot. Um, Actually, fuck, before I forget, that has been, that's been this episode of Jen and Jake's Bizarre Fray. However, I would like to point out that on top of the fact that today they were recording this anyway, we released a tier list for myself, Jen, Morgan, and my fiance Rhiannon. We all got together to talk about the entire MCU and ranking it in a tier list. I edited the absolute motherfucker out of that thing. Like, I think it took me like 16 to 20 hours to edit the final thing. It's pretty funny. I like it. I'm proud of it. But
It's the first video we put out that's under 3 hours since we started this show.
that's awesome. That being said, I am going to, after we record this, we have a discussion that is our first members only video for this channel, our discussion on James Gunn's Superman, which we did talk about before. I'm going to make that available. It is private right now, but now members will be able to watch it. So after you watch this, if you are a member on this channel, you can go and you can watch that right now. Oh, wow. Wow. Also, tune
Wow.
in to the resurrection of the First Watch podcast, which has been revived and revitalized. And Davey was on the most recent episode of it, and they talk about Akira Kurosawa movies. And everybody should watch more Akira Kurosawa movies because that dude was legit. And I have a feeling that they are, with what the release lineup of future movies looks like, I have a feeling that they're probably going to do an episode on the next Paul Thomas Anderson movie, one battle after another. So I have a feeling that you all can look forward to that. I know I am looking forward to getting my ass in the theater and seeing it because I have heard some good things.
Yep, it just premiered at TIFF, and some very good word is coming out from TIFF. So
I don't always take Ehrlich's word to heart, but him saying it's maybe the best American studio released film since like 2010 is like
that's a
I
big,
am I am
that's big.
interested. And also like it's PTA doing Pinchin again. Uh, yeah, I'm in.
Okay, let's put
So,
a cap on this. Next time on Jen and Jake's Bizarre Affray, we need to talk about Elfin Lied. And Kevin can certainly fuck himself.
RIP. Rest in peace.
Yes!